doing another Super Bowl 60 picks and prop show. Going to see if we have a dissenting opinion because we have had 3 guests on this week, and all 3 have picked the Patriots. So can't wait to break it down and get to hear what props our co-host has for tonight. Before we get into it, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. As always, I'm wearing something for the merch store. So September is Lust Month t-shirt. If you can see here, we have Biden in case you couldn't see. But he eerily looks like my father-in-law, and every time my daughter, 2-year-old daughter, sees it, she's like pop 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 pop, and he wears the shirt. So he says he gets weird looks, and maybe it's because people think that he's wearing a shirt with his own picture on it, which I hadn't thought of. But you can get that as well as everything else at the merch store, 15% off. You can get all these shirts in different colors. You can pick whatever color you want. You can get them in long sleeve hoodie, infant onesie, and women's tank top. You can get our mugs. We can get our apron. You can get our baseball caps. We'll have some stuff, some very new stuff soon. You can go to Amazon, buy my books. The most recent one is Jerks of the College Years, where I made fun of these lovely people as well as many others. My first book is The Safety and a Field Goal, which, by the way, I couldn't find in my house. I knew I have it somewhere. But Andy and I were talking about one of the stories I wrote about in this book, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I haven't read that in a while. I wrote it like 8 years ago. I haven't read it though. In 8 years when I was proofreading it, I was like, I want to read that story, and I couldn't find the book. So I think I have to order this one. So I'm going to order my book. You can also help us out with super chats, super stickers. That's the best way to support the show. We had a $50 super chat during our Friday live stream, and I can't say it enough. Like, thank you so much, guys. And you really want to keep the show going, and that's the way to do it, because these Q1 ad rates are extremely bad, and it's just going to get worse with the market crashing and Bitcoin crashing and everything crashing. So please consider super chat, super stickers. All right, we're joined by Evan Daniel. Evan, how are you? How's your Super Bowl prep going?
I thought you were going to ask how was my watching of the Pro Bowl, which I didn't watch any of, or how was my week 21, 20? I don't know what week was last week. A week off. Now we get back to it. I did watch some of the honors, the awards tonight, and I know that was a big topic. People throughout the season betting Stafford when his odds got better, maybe betting May at some point. I don't have access to betting any MVP odds on FanDuel in New York. So no action for me tonight. I actually forgot that the odds show was even on until about 15 minutes ago, or 15 minutes before it ended. So I caught the rest of the awards.
I had no idea.
Yeah, no idea. Yeah. Shout out to my mom. My mom was watching, and she told me, "Oh, you're watching the award show now?" And I said, "Actually, I had no idea it was even on. No idea." There you go. Shows how much
I really thought it was Saturday. I really did.
Is it usually Saturday the night before?
Yeah, it usually is. I was saving. I wrote up my awards page. I was saving it to post on Saturday. I didn't know.
And the Pro Bowl, or whatever they do for the Pro Bowl games, is usually Sunday.
Yeah.
And apparently this year it was on Tuesday. So
I
don't know. Maybe it's just like a Browns practice with Shador and Flacco playing. Who knows? What a joke. But no, I'm excited to get into it. Last week we did a fun show about props. So for anyone who's interested in strategy in general about props, that was last week's show. And really excited. I spent a lot of time going through power rankings and schedule analysis and matchup analysis, kind of ad nauseum here. And there's just so much to look at. I heard a little bit of your show with Andy. I was trying to uncover every single angle, not really to figure out who I wanted to bet. I kind of knew who I wanted to be on from last week or even from previous weeks, knowing what the potential matchups would be. But, there's a lot that you want to uncover. And obviously, either team, I think you can make a case for either team. So I think it's really important to kind of look at every angle. And let's all be fair and remember that if this game is played 100 times, it's not an 80% proposition that one team is going to win or cover 80% of the time. So I do think there's a lot here for both teams that could yield certain matchup advantages both ways. And I think there's a lot of comparisons here that we can make throughout. So I'm excited to break it all down.
Yeah, I'm excited to break it all down too. Yeah, it's been on Thursday last few years. Apparently, I didn't know. I always thought it was on Saturday, the night before the Super Bowl, but apparently they made the change, which I guess makes sense because you're going to get more eyeballs on the Thursday night than a Saturday night. But apparently, I had no idea. So glad to see McMillan win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Not like especially happy because I had a huge bet on Ibuka and Trevion Henderson. Ibuka looked like a lock for a while, and then he just fell off a cliff. But I did hedge with McMillan, so there's at least that. But yeah, I'm excited to like I said, to break down the picks here. And as I pointed out before, I'm gonna post the scores that people predicted for the Super Bowl. And as I said, we've had 3 guests on so far this week. We had Nuggets, Patriots 24, Seahawks 20, Butters, Patriots 16, Seahawks 13. Andy last night had Patriots 27, Seahawks 21. So, well, we'll see if you have that dissenting opinion I talked about. But yeah, before we get into the pick, I figured we could just break down our general thoughts on the game. And like what we're thinking about for each team. I think that would be a good place to start. So I don't know, like which I'll hand out to you, like which team did you or I asked Andy this last night. I'll ask it to you. During the process, I started with one, thinking I was going to go with one team, and I switched to the other. Like how was your process in handicapping this game? How'd that go? Like, did you have that sort of thing, or did you switch, or did you get stronger on one side? Like how did that take place?
Well, so obviously I'm looking at power rankings throughout the season, throughout the playoffs, and I guess I went into the playoffs with I thought there was probably 5, maybe 6 teams that I thought were real contenders. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean the Broncos couldn't have gotten there. They were obviously a 1 seed. So it's just really a matter of winning 1 or 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. But I didn't have them as a real contender. So I guess I don't know how to answer that question. Did I get stronger as the week went on? I guess I did. I guess you could say that I did get stronger in my conviction throughout the process of going through all my notes. But I really did go into this game, as I do really every week, just looking at my initial power ratings, who's better, who's worse, where do I think the line should be, where do I think the line will be. And we kind of looked at that a little bit before the divisional round as we look at potential futures. And then, of course, before the conference championships is what would the lines be, I asked you. And at that time, what would the line be if it's this matchup versus that matchup? And just to see if there's any reason to take a futures bet based that may not happen, right? A game that if it doesn't happen, if the matchup doesn't exist, then you get your money back. And we did that with the Eagles Niners a couple of weeks ago. Obviously it didn't work out, but we got a great line. And I was looking earlier, and this line is a little bit higher now or opened higher than it did on the previous before the championship games. Now, is that because the Seahawks played great and the Pats didn't? Is it because the Pats played in a blizzard and really didn't have to do much? Is it because May has maybe a little bit of a shoulder injury people are talking about? So there could be a lot of different factors that have the lines open and kind of continue where they are. So I don't really pay too much about that. But I guess I should start, or we should start, kind of where I do every week and looking at overall power ratings. So like I said, there were really 6 teams that I thought could win the Super Bowl. And those were the Bills, Rams, Seahawks, Pats, Eagles, and maybe Jacksonville. I think you and I both liked the Jags, how they finished the season. And we said that winner of the Bills-Jacksonville's game is going to go to the Super Bowl. These are like probably the top 2 teams in the conference. I do have the Pats ahead of Jacksonville. So I think for what I look at right now, I think that at least 2 of the 6 teams that I had originally are here. And it's not the Bears. And dare I say, the Niners are not good enough, of course. The Chargers I didn't think were contenders. And, of course, neither of us thought Denver or Green Bay were real contenders. So I'm glad that we don't have one of those Super Bowls where it's like Colts and the Bears from back in the day when Rex Grossman played. So at least now we have 2 contenders that, quote-unquote, belong. But I always like to look at my power ratings to start. And I still have Buffalo number 1 in the league. So the best team is not playing. And I have the Rams as the second best team in the league. And I thought when you look back to 2 weeks ago, that game, we discussed this too much. There's no reason to go back to that game, but that game could have gone either way. There were 2 or 3 major plays in that game, and it certainly wouldn't have surprised anybody if the Rams had scored a touchdown late. They certainly had the ball on the 6-yard line, so they may have been favored in that moment to win the game. So I still have the Rams as a slightly better team, and I would have liked to see Bills-Rams as this matchup. So I don't think you have the best or even the second best team or the best team in either conference playing in this game. So I have Seattle next, and I have the Pats at 4. And I think my power ratings here have this game basically 1.5 to 2.5. So I think just from a pure power rating perspective, that the line in this game, if I were making lines, would be Seahawks minus 2.5. Now, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that I think the Seahawks are going to win or the Patriots are going to win. Just I think these teams are a lot closer from a power rating perspective and have been throughout the season than the line would indicate. So that's where I always start my analysis, is on pure computerized power ratings. And then I'd asked you last week, and it's something that I went back and I wanted to think when did you start really believing in these teams? Because let's be fair, preseason Seattle was 60-1 and New England was 80-1. Mm-hmm. So, and the Patriots line for win totals was 8.5 and Seattle was at 7.5, maybe 8, depending on where you shop. So we're talking about 2 teams that were aligned to be 500 teams. So I'll ask you, at what point in your season, as you adjust power ratings throughout the year, did you start, number one, believing that these teams were even above average? Well, where did you start with these teams? Because I had the Patriots starting at number 19, and I was really down on Seattle. I had them down at number 25. So the question is, where did you start? At what point did you have them as above average? And then when did you think, hey, you know what? These are 2 teams that could potentially contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you asked me last week, and you're like, "I'm going to give you some homework, and you're going to do what you just asked." And like, joke's on you. When I was in school, I didn't do any homework. Well, actually, I did the homework here, and as far as I think we should take each team one by one. The Seahawks, I started them at 23, so a little bit ahead of you, but still as I thought a below average team for sure. I didn't have them reaching the playoffs, and we talked about last night with Andy how Slew in the chat was kind enough to give us strength of schedule based on my power rankings. And based on my power rankings, the Niners had the easiest schedule, and it's because they played the Seahawks twice. Is part of the reason. Obviously, they had a lot of easy games too, or at least that we thought were easy. You know, like they played Jacksonville. Jacksonville turned out to be a lot better than we thought. So that was part of that. And so in the early parts of the season, you know, they go into Pittsburgh and win like pretty convincingly, and then the next week they crush the Saints. And at this point, I'm thinking like, okay, they're not below average. Like they are at least average, I think. And then flash forward a few weeks later, you know, they beat Tampa. Sorry, they lose to Tampa, but Tampa had been playing very well at that point, but they still lost to Tampa at home. And so I was like, I still think they're an average team at that point. But then they had this 3-week run where they actually, I think it was 3 out of 4 weeks because they had a bye in there. They went into Jacksonville and won, and then they hosted Houston. They won by 8, but they really dominated that game. They had they made a lot of sloppy plays, and that they still won by 8 points. And then the next week they went into Washington and absolutely obliterated Washington. And I think that like this 3-game stretch where they looked good against were 2 good teams, and then Washington, you know, we thought they were a better team. I remember we picked Washington in our Circa contest entry. But the way they handled Washington, like the way that they absolutely dominated the game, I was like, okay, this team is for real. Like they, I think they have a chance to go deep in the playoffs. I didn't necessarily have them as the number 1 seed, you know, or number 1 team in my power rankings at that point. I had them, I believe at that point I had them like number 5 or 6. But they were starting to creep up, and I know Andy at this point had them number 2. So I mean, credit to him, he was higher on them than anyone. Well, you know, at this stage of the season. So yeah, it was at that point where I thought Seattle was a deep playoff contender. And if you told me back then after they crushed Washington, hey, Seattle's going to win the Super Bowl, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I could see it. So, what about you? Where did you first start?
It's funny. We're kind of like a lockstep on it because I had them number 25, and one of my contest picks in week 1 was Niners -3. So I thought that line was a major mistake. I had Seattle as a -3, 3 points worse than an average team. And they played well in week 1. Obviously, that game was close, 17-13, close loss to the Niners. But in watching that game, I realized I probably had the wrong side. And laying the points on the road, the Niners got lucky to win because McDonald ended up kicking a field goal, 4th and 1. And then the Niners drove the field and had a very, very lucky touchdown. Kittle was hurt in the middle of that game, and they had a very lucky touchdown that was kind of like a throwaway pass that was caught. I think it was Tonjes who caught that touchdown. And then Seattle was driving, and Bosa got the strip sack. So I'm like, we kind of escaped that. Niners got the win and cover. And I realized I probably have this team too low, but you don't want to overreact week 1. So I bumped them up from -3 to -2.5. Then when they won in Pittsburgh, now remember, that was a crazy fluke touchdown on a kickoff, if you remember, where they kicked off and the ball kind of just floated around. I think it was Caleb Johnson in the end zone who just misplayed the ball.
Yeah.
And I thought that was obviously a big turning point in that game, but they still went into Pittsburgh, who I had thought was better, and won by 2 touchdowns. So I adjusted my Seattle power rating from -3 to -2.5, and then immediately to 0. So immediately by week 3, I had them as an average team. And I kind of had them ticking up exactly like you did until they beat Washington. So we're both on Washington. That was a Jaden Daniels game. That wasn't a Mariota game.
Yep.
And they absolutely destroyed them. Was that a road game? Yeah, that was in Washington. I think that was at night. Was that a night game?
Sunday night, yeah.
Sunday night. So in that game alone, I adjusted my Seattle power rating from a +1.5 to +4. Massive 2.5 point adjustment. And +4 brings you into like the top 6, right? So I had them from like number 25 to around 17, 18 within 2 weeks. And then by week 10, I had them in the top 10. So I think at that point, I kind of had them close to where they are now. Obviously, they've ticked up a little bit as the season went along. But I think we're lockstep in our assessment of Seattle. We kind of realized right away we're both wrong. Let's quickly abandon that preseason thought. And then by the middle of the season, they were a contender as they should be. They're one of the top teams in the league statistically and eye test. So, yeah, I think we're lockstep there in that by middle of the season, we both had them pretty high.
Yeah. So as far as the Patriots, I had them number 24 entering the season. So 1 spot behind Seattle. And the opening game didn't really do them any favors as far as my evaluation. In fact, I dropped them to 26 after that loss to the Raiders. And I didn't think the Raiders would be that good. I didn't think the Raiders were going to be that bad, though. Like they had Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, like 2 proven guys entering the team. They still had Jacoby Myers. They had Brock Bowers, who was we didn't know if he was going to be banged up for many games. We thought their defense was going to be good. I think their defensive tackle, I forget his name. He's the one who got kicked off the team. I don't remember if he was still on the team. Christian Wilkins. I don't know if he was still on the team by then. But anyway, I thought the Raiders would be not like horrible. I thought they'd be like slightly below average. So the Raiders went into New England and won. So that caused me to drop them a few spots. And then funny enough, like the game that kind of thought or got me to get them to mediocrity was actually a loss. It was the week 3 loss to Pittsburgh. They lost 21-14, but they fumbled like 4 times in that game, including twice the goal line, and then they had another turnover as well. So they had picking the end zone, right. So they had all these turnovers. And so they lost, like I said, they lost 21-14, but they dominated the game. They outgained the Steelers 369 to 203 and averaged 5.2 yards per play compared to 4.1. and the week before they won in Miami, and so at that point I'm like, okay, this is probably like close to an average team at this point. And I'm someone who, and Andy loves this because he brings it up all the time. I'm someone who always throws out week 1 results after you get to like week 3 or week 4, because like week 1's basically the preseason, because these teams or these players don't play in the preseason. So at that point, I'm like, okay, New England's better than we think. They really should be 2-1, and their one loss is week 1, which can be discarded eventually. And then the next week they destroyed Carolina, and I didn't think Carolina was a good team by any means at that point. But the fact that like they absolutely dominated the Panthers, it was like, okay, this team is definitely at least average at that point. And then the Sunday night game the following week, we had them against the Bills. We had, what were they, like +8, +7.5? Yeah, they went into Buffalo and won. And it was a close game, so it really could have gone either way. But they looked like they belonged with what we thought was a top 3 team in the NFL at the time, and still do. And so they kind of proved themselves. And then they kind of rattle off wins against bad teams. Like they beat the Saints, they beat Spencer Rattler Saints, I should say. They go into Tennessee and dominate in that Vrabel revenge game. They crushed the Browns. And then they beat Atlanta. It was a close game. And then I think the game that kind of like gave me the spidey sense about the Patriots was them going to Tampa and winning. And in hindsight, it really shouldn't have been, because Tampa at the time we thought they were a much better team because they had a lot better record back then. But that was the beginning of their decline, because Baker Mayfield was playing hurt. But at the time, though, the Patriots going into Tampa and winning, they won by 5. It felt like they won by more than that. I thought that was a sign that, like, okay, this team is going to make some noise in the playoffs, potentially win a game or two. I didn't think they'd win the Super Bowl by then. I think as far as like thinking that the Patriots could win the Super Bowl, I think that was later, after their bye, when they came back and won against Baltimore. I know Huntley was playing and Lamar Jackson got hurt, but still, it was still an impressive comeback against a great defense. And that came after they blew that 21-0 lead to Buffalo in New England. And so the fact that they were able to bounce back so well from that, at that point, I'm like, crap, I don't have any exactas on the Patriots, and so, heading into the playoffs, I bet the exactas the Patriots. So that's where I was with the Patriots. How'd you come up with the Patriots?
Yeah, so I started them at number 19 at -1. So as a below average team, and Andy and I had this conversation when I signed up for the Super Contest and the Circa, and he said, Andy, you might remember, he said, I like the Pats under 8.5. And why are they so high? And I said, I disagree. I like the Pats over 8.5. And I agree that I don't think they're a good above average football team. I wasn't really high on May last year, and I wasn't really a big May fan in college, but it kind of came around on me, and I loved the Vrabel hire. I thought that was a massive, massive change. They were attention to detail defensively, signing Milton Williams. I thought that there was going to be a major improvement from a coaching perspective that would take this team to like the mediocrity level. So I thought, number 19 was fair, slightly below average, but the schedule to me was a joke going in, that I bet the over 8.5. And in the Super Contest wins pool that you were not allowed to participate in, I had Seattle under 7.5, and I had New England over 8.5. But after they lost to the Raiders, talk about not wanting to make too much of an adjustment, I went from -1 to -2.5, which is a pretty big downgrade week 1. Said, if you're going to lose to the Raiders at home, that's a problem. And they didn't look good offensively. And I said, okay, I got to be cautious with this team. I can't maybe my preconceived preseason notion is wrong, and I'm too high on this team at -1. And they didn't look good against Miami either. And both of us, or one of our biggest bets early in the season, was the Miami under 8.5, which was knocked down to 7.5, which we took the under 7.5 as well. And I thought Miami was a horrible team from day one, and that never changed. And barely beating Miami, even though it was on the road, I thought that was a red flag. And like you, when I started believing in them, was the Pittsburgh game in the loss, because they just played so well, and it was fluky turnovers the fumble going into the end zone and the pick in the end zone and the 4 overall turnovers, that I said, okay, I understand they lost by 7, but they really should have won that game. And maybe I was too high on Pitt from the beginning because they gave me the bump on Seattle as well the week before. And after that game, I had Pats back to -2. And then when they destroyed Carolina, who I thought was bad, I said, you know what? We're going into week 5. I'm back to -1. I had the line like close to 9.5 in that Buffalo game. That was a 7.5 point spread. And it was a late game Sunday night, and it was our last pick in the contest. And I even said it wouldn't surprise me if they won the game. They're going to go out, they're going to be competitive, it's going to be close, and I think they could win that game. And after that game, I moved them to above average. And they just ticked up every single week. Despite the schedule, despite the softness of some of those games, the Saints game, they should have won by a lot more than 6. That was the game where Diggs had a long pass. They called an offensive PI. Then there was another long pass play that was not called DPI by some crazy, like they should have won that game by 14 to 21 points. Tennessee, we both were on that game. They blew them out. Cleveland took care of business. The Atlanta game was close. The Atlanta game, they got lucky with the missed extra point late. But yeah, the Tampa game, they won on the road. Even though Tampa might not be as good, it was still a road game. Same for Cincinnati, another road game. And yeah, okay, so they beat the Jets. But they took care of business. They played the Giants. Denver barely beat the Giants. Chicago barely beat the Giants. New England plays the Giants. They blew them out. So they did what they had to do. And then even though they blew the game to Buffalo, and Buffalo was not a good first half team throughout the season, I thought the first half of that Buffalo game was kind of like, okay, this is Pat's ceiling. If this is the type of team they can be, we have to raise their power rating. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be this way every week. We all know that. That was as good as they could possibly play, that first half Buffalo. But I thought if that's their ceiling, then this is a true contender. And then coming back against Baltimore, even though it was Huntley played well in that game. And Lamar hadn't been playing well. So the comeback alone on the road, I thought that was a very impressive comeback. So to me, at that point, I figured, okay, it's going to be a favorable schedule. They're going to be home for the first couple rounds. Can they win the Super Bowl? Sure. Are they a top team? Probably not. I still had Buffalo and maybe even Jacksonville right there. But given the schedule, I said there was going to probably be some weird matchups and some scheduling that just based on matchups, some teams are going to get through. So I'm not looking to bet the exactas at that time, but I figured, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pats made a real run. So yeah, I think we're pretty much in lockstep on where we started believing in the teams, where they kind of came from. But that really takes us into the schedule variables. And I really want to hammer this home because everybody talks about how easy the Patriots schedule was, and there's no question about it. It was an easy schedule. But the Seahawks schedule was not that different. First of all, they played a lot of common opponents. And I know that was discussed with you and Andy yesterday. Yeah. But they played a lot of the same teams. Atlanta, Tampa, Cleveland, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. A lot of these, Carolina, these teams are the same. They both played a lot of bad teams this season. And some of the good teams that were played, well, yeah. So Seattle played the Rams 3 times. Okay. And New England played Buffalo twice, and they played Baltimore, who's still a good team. Just because they didn't have a great record, they're still a good team. And I know they played the Niners 3 times as well. But let's be fair. The divisional game against the Niners, that was a shell of the Niners team. And even Week 18 was somewhat of a shell too. Now, they played well in the divisional round. They did not play so well in Week 18. Defensively, yes. Offensively, they did nothing. They scored 13 points against the Niners' garbage defense. But in the divisional round, it was kind of like an avalanche. Game just got out of hand. The Rams games were good games. One of the games, Darnold threw 4 picks, but they hung around because the Rams just didn't score with a lead late. One of the games was a fluky comeback. Give them credit for coming back. And 2 weeks ago, they played a fantastic game. But for the most part, if you look at the games, if you look at the overall schedule, Seattle got to play Max Brosmer, who did absolutely nothing. They played Phillip Rivers. They played Tennessee, as we mentioned, and did not cover. Yes, they were up 2 scores, but they didn't play great in that game. They got to play Arizona, who is horrible, right? They both played Houston. They both played Tampa. Tampa beat Seattle in Seattle. They played the New Orleans with Rattler. So there's just a lot of common opponents there where I understand we want to talk about win records and overall strength of schedule. There's not that much of a difference between the schedules that they faced, both teams, especially with the common opponents. The real difference being the Rams were a top team. They played them 3 times. And then you can make the argument that the Niners were a top team, but the Niners weren't a top team. The Niners were like number 10, right? Baltimore was better than San Francisco. So just because San Francisco made it further, that doesn't mean they were a real above average team, and especially with the players they had at that time. Trent Williams on 1 foot, no Kittle in the second game. I mean, half the defense was missing. So let's not say that Seattle had such a cupcake, such a much more difficult schedule than New England. Furthermore, in the playoffs, I get it. Denver was playing without a quarterback, but they were playing with. They're not a paper tiger defense. They're an above average defense in a blizzard. They also played against the Texans defense, which is great. Yes, they got to play against a Stroud quarterback who is just, imploding at the seams, but they still have to go up against a very, very good defense in, again, poor weather conditions. And yeah, the Chargers don't have an offensive line, but New England did a great job against them defensively. And May did what he had to do, despite taking a bunch of sacks and turning the ball over. They still did what they needed to do with a very young quarterback. So I would argue that the playoff road to the Super Bowl, Seattle had really one game against the Rams, and New England had three tough defenses in poor weather conditions. So would you rather have the Seahawks schedule, one team that's, breaking at the seams, the Niners, and then basically just playing one home game against your divisional rival to get to the Super Bowl, whereas the Pats had to play 3 games in tough weather conditions where anything could happen against good defenses? So I would call that equal at best, winning 3 games in those conditions versus 1.5 games, or maybe let's call it 2.5 games to 1.5 games because the Denver injury versus the Niner injury, they call them a half a win. So I don't think that the Seattle schedule was that much harder where we can then point to saying, well, this team doesn't belong because they got lucky with a cupcake schedule. I don't think that's the case. I think it's very clear to me that the schedule variables here are really much more similar than people think.
Before I answer that, we had a 499 super chat from Kim McEagle. Thank you so much, Kim McEagle. It says Patriots first possessions to end in a punt at -113. Patriots under 19.5 at even money, under 45.5 for the game. Seahawks to win. Go Hawks. First possession to end in a punt at -113. I mean, usually the teams are slow to start, so I think that's okay. I mean, shop around obviously to see if you get the best line. I think it could end. It's not like a bet I would make, but
I'll tell you why I don't like it.
Okay, yeah,
I'll tell you why I don't like that.
Yeah, good.
Number one, obviously turnovers happen. Right. More importantly, if they get the ball first at the 35-yard line, and they end up somewhere around midfield on a 4th and 1, they could go for a 4th down and they won't punt. They can turn the ball over on downs without a punt. Also, they cannot get the ball first. There could be a turnover, and they can get the ball in very good field position the other side, and then go 3 and out and kick a field goal. Mm-hmm. So I think there's way too many things that can happen where they don't score or they don't score early, and that possession doesn't end in a punt. Therefore, I would not take that unless I had plus money.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And the other two I don't want to comment on because we'll talk about absolute game scores and team totals as we go along.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you could see what I have on the site as far as the game total, 45.5. I do have the under, so we agree on that. So yeah, well, go Hawks. Kim, we'll hope your team comes through. All right, so I
want you to react to my schedule comments because I know that you've talked about how it's a huge difference, and I just don't think it's that great of a difference overall.
Well, I mean, if you just look at the numbers, and I pulled up the Tankathon here, just to get a look at the real numbers. The Patriots, their strength of schedule is 0.391, and Seattle was 0.498. So I mean that's pretty substantial. It's a substantial difference. The only team that didn't have a that had a worse strength of schedule than 0.43 was Denver, and so they played Denver in the AFC Championship, obviously, and it's like the two easiest schedules in the NFL. And like obviously there's a big difference between the teams because New England, whereas they crushed a lot of their easy opponents, Denver barely beat those easy opponents, like 10-7 against the Raiders. Like, need I say more? Can
I counter one quick point? So that strength of schedule takes the Colts.
Yeah.
And the Colts were a very, very different team.
Sure.
When the Seahawks played them. If you really break it down, they're getting credit for like 8 wins that the Colts had, but they played a Colts team that was closer to a 300 team than a 600 team, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting credit for a lot of those extra wins. And if you take their overall schedule and you deduct what the Colts ended up being what? What was the Colts' final record?
They were 8-9.
What were they in the last 6 weeks of the season?
I don't think they won any games.
Exactly. So you can make an argument that they're not close to a 500 team. They're closer to the Jets. Well, sorry. Let's be fair. They're not the Jets. They're closer to a team like maybe Miami or Arizona, right? So when you talk, let's look at New England. Like, who are some of the easier teams New England play? Cleveland. So the Jets obviously throws that a little bit of a wrench into that scheduling because the Jets are just so bad, and that's a free square win, and they get to play them twice. So you talk about that goes on that card, and that really lowers the numbers to below 400. But I'm not trying to pick through every single matchup. But again, you're getting extra points because they played the Rams 3 times and they played the Colts when the Colts were just really bad. Minnesota, same idea. What was Minnesota's overall record? I don't even know Minnesota's. What were they? 8-9 also, Minnesota?
I think they were 9-8. I think
9-8. Okay, great. But if they had Max Brosmer for 17 games, they probably would have been 3-14, right? So they were nowhere near 9-8 with Brosmer at quarterback. Nowhere near it.
Yeah,
so that was another free square. So they played the Colts and Phillip Rivers' first game back in 5 years, and there was like no chance that the Colts were going to win that game. It was in Seattle, and Seattle barely won 18-16, and they beat Brosmer 26-0. So all of a sudden, in their strength of victory, they get credit for all those extra Minnesota and Colts wins when they did not play the 500 Colts or the 500 Vikings.
I would counter with that. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it, for sure. I mean, just blindly looking at the numbers, I think is a mistake in any capacity. I think you need to dig into stuff and really make sure that the numbers are truthful. But I think that what you said about the Seahawks playing the Colts with Rivers and the Vikings with Brosmer, you could also translate that to Seattle playing teams that finished with, let's just say, records that could have been better had these teams been in the same situation in which Seattle had played them. And I could give you 3 examples of that. Week 1, the Niners, obviously they lost the game, but that Niners team had Nick Bosa and Fred Warner on the field. If that Niner team had Fred Warner and Nick Bosa the entire year, like they would have been a top 3-4 team, right? I mean, probably
would have beat Seattle in Week 18 also.
But yeah, possible.
They were a 1-point underdog in that game, and Trent Williams on a half a leg, and no Bosa, no Warner. The Niners are favored in that game.
Yes, right. So
Seattle might not be here at all.
That's true. But it just goes to show that like the Niners, they could have had if Seattle, if that Niner team had those 2 guys the entire year, their record would have been better than there was already an impressive record. 3 weeks later, they play an Arizona team that was absolutely dreadful down the stretch. But at that point in the season, Arizona was 2-1. They would have been 3-0 if DeMarcado doesn't drop the ball shy of the goal line. And that Arizona defense, it was solid at the start of the year. I think they were EPA. They were like 12th until like week 6 or 7. And then when everyone got hurt, they just fell off a cliff and they became like the worst defense in the NFL. And they finished with one of the worst records in the NFL. I think if their defense stayed healthy all year, I think they went 8-9 the year before. I think they could have gone 8-9 again. So Seattle played a tougher Arizona team than what we saw for most of the year. And then the next week they play Tampa. They lose to Tampa, but still, Tampa at that point had only 1 loss, and they were much better because at the end of the year Mayfield was playing hurt. So like I feel like you could go like back and forth on all of these and just dissect it. And I think it's a good exercise to do that. But I think overall, if you just look at the Patriots schedule, like they played like every bad team in the NFL, like no joke, like they played the Raiders, they played the stupid Dolphins twice, the Jets twice. So they had 2 easy divisional games as opposed to two divisional games each for those 2 opponents than Seattle had. They had the Panthers, which the Seattle had played, Saints, which Seattle had played, Tennessee, which Seattle had played, but then they played the Browns also. They played the Giants, which Seattle did not play. So they had, I think, more cupcakes than Seattle. Seattle has some cupcakes. New England had all the cupcakes. You know, they're like me. If I go to the grocery store, I buy all the cupcakes. That's I think that's the difference. But I do agree with you with your point in that there's certainly nuance to it, and maybe it's not as drastic as the difference between 0.391 and 0.498. But I would say that Seattle certainly had the tougher schedule of the two teams.
I agree. Seattle had a tougher schedule, and for pure power ratings, for what it's worth, I have Seattle as the better team, right? The slightly better team. But I wanted to bring up the scheduling because when you look at statistics, and I know we talk a lot about that, and I less care about EPA per play, and even what I like to use is the yards per play and overall rankings, because again, there's a lot of nuance to it. It depends on who you play and when you play them, who's hurt, who's not hurt. But as you look through the overall statistics of both teams, the profile, and that's where I kind of come to my power ratings, is having these teams so close together, where the line obviously suggests that these teams are, well, call what it is. There's no home field advantage here. So the line has the game 4.5 points difference. For me to get to 4.5 points, for example, I have the Bengals at a 0.5. And that's with Burrow. So a healthy Bengals are barely above 500. I would have the Jaguars, who I have as a +5, about 4.5 points better than Cincinnati now. If I had Seattle against the Bengals, I would have that line at 6. But for me, if I had the Patriots against the Bengals, I would make the line 3.5, 4. So for me to get a 4.5 points difference, remember, I only have 7 points difference between the average team and the top team. It's generally how I roll: 0 for the average, +7 down to -7. In rare exception, although we've seen it in the last couple of years, I've had teams like last year, Kansas City, Philly, Buffalo, above 7. Teams that I thought were really good teams. Over the years, we've had Kansas City that's been up there. Buffalo last year was better than they are this year. Philadelphia was for sure better last year than what we see from the top teams this year. And I've said that for a couple of weeks now to you, in that, yeah, the Rams might be the best team. I thought you were talking about the Rams being the best team in the league. And I said, they probably are. If they're not the best team, they're right there. But they're not as good as the top teams last year. So we're getting a lot of mediocrity from this year's league, and I think we see that throughout the season. So when we talk about all these statistics, it's like we have to keep in mind that this is a very mediocre league. And to say that one team is dominant, that they're favored by this many points above a field goal, to me is a lot. And we'll go through some of the historical data from the Super Bowl a little bit later. But as I'm looking through my overall yards per play charts, New England offense 4, Seattle 6. Defensively, Seattle 4, New England 7. Pretty close. Rushing the ball, this is where teams maybe it doesn't really make a difference as much, because I have Seattle. Where's my Seattle number here? I have New England at 14 and Seattle at 24 rushing, and that's with a healthy Charbonnet. So I think that's going to take a little bit of a hit. Seattle, the best team defending the run. New England number 10. So there's your matchup there on the rushing. Passing, interestingly enough, New England 1, Seattle 2. And I want to get to that in a little bit too, because there's a discrepancy between the first half of the year and the latter part of the year. Defending the pass, also, I think a very, very key matchup in this game. Seattle 3, New England 4. The point that I'm making here is I think these teams are really, really, really close statistically, schedule-wise, who they've been able to dominate throughout the course of the season. And just because one team played the Jets twice and Miami twice and the Raiders once, and it really skews their overall schedule numbers, I still think there's a lot of similarities between the two teams and the power rating overall. And again, this means nothing, right? This just means where I would make the line. I think the line here above 3, at 4.5, is a significant difference from my overall power rating at what I think should be Seattle favored by probably closer to 2.5 than I do 4.5.
Yeah, we disagree on the line. So I wonder if that's going to impact our our picks here is if we have different sides. I made the line 4, so I think it's pretty on point. I didn't think that it warranted an adjustment for 3.5 to 4.5. That's kind of like why I was on New England to start, but like a 3.5 to 4.5 shift doesn't mean all that much. Like games land on 4, not too often. I believe it's like 4.5% or 2.5% or something like that.
Didn't one of your guests choose 24-20?
Sorry, what did you say?
Didn't one of your guys choose 24-20, 4-point game right there?
They did, yeah. I mean, look, 4 could mean something, but it's not like going from 5.5 to 6.5 or 6.5 to 7.5. Like that obviously means more, or 2.5 to 3.5 obviously would mean the world. So I'm not like too worried about the line. The projected line is just a small piece of the pie, and of course it's something you have to look at. But as Andy said yesterday, it's like who are you to say like, it's this line should be 4, not 4.5? Like who are you to say that's right? Like maybe your numbers are off by half a point or whatever. So it's not the end all be all. It's not like and I said this yesterday. I start looking at line difference if there's a 10% marginal difference between the line. So it's a 10% probability difference of the game landing on a number as opposed to what the spread is. That's when I'll look at the spread more seriously. But again, like you could still be off on your numbers too. So you really need to look at everything. You just can't like blindly do that. So small piece of the pie. I was curious. The question, your stats that you brought up, like when you said Patriots 4th or Seahawks 3rd, did that incorporate the playoffs too?
Yes, incorporates every play, and that's part of the problem, right? Because it does include games against the Jets or the Raiders or the Brosmer Vikings or the Rivers Colts. So there's a lot of things that kind of skew it. That's why I say I always start with power ratings. Just to kind of get your initial gauge on where your baseline is, right? Because to me, what's more important during the regular season, I think situation trumps matchup, right? Who are you playing next week? Who'd you play the previous week? Where's your rest advantage? I think there's a lot of, this team's coming off a win, this team's coming off a loss. I think situationally, that's a tremendous part of my handicap week in, week out. And then, of course, we look at matchups. Some teams might be better against the pass versus the run. There may be an edge. There may be. I try not to factor in injuries as much as you do, because if we wanted to talk about injuries, we would have been on Jacksonville heavy, knowing that Josh Allen's got a broken foot, right? Or all of a sudden, Darnold's got a busted oblique or a strained oblique. None of this matters to me. If the guy is suiting up, to me, he's playing. To me, he's fine. And Josh Allen, he may have had surgery on a broken bone in his foot. He ran when he needed to run. Sam Darnold has a bad oblique. He threw the ball just fine. There was no change to his ability to throw the ball. He had a couple of really nice throws against the Niners. Didn't have to do too much because of the score. And he played fantastic 2 weeks ago. So I don't want to hear about an oblique. I don't want to hear about May's shoulder. I don't want to hear about Eman Wari's, whatever his injury that he's dealing with. I'm not interested in it. If the guy is playing, I don't really factor that in as much. To me, it's really situational and then matchup. And in the Super Bowl, I think obviously the situation is irrelevant. Both teams get a bye, and it's the biggest game of their lives. And I think obviously in the Super Bowl, and this is where it comes to key factors and overall matchups. And I think we really nailed this last year, key factors that we talked about: pressure, QB pressure, getting pressure with 4. And I think that was obviously the biggest key factor going into that game. And it turned out that was the key factor in the game, that Mahomes had no time to throw. So for me, in this game, much more important than power ratings, which is simply a computerized, you could tell me that either team's going to win this game by 6 or 10 or 9, just because I think the line should be 2 points different doesn't mean I'm going to bet a game or pick a game purely based on where my power ratings computer might show that it could be or should be.
Yeah. So to be clear for a second, as far as injuries are concerned, like that the injuries wouldn't have turned me off Buffalo or whatever, or the Seahawks with Darnold. What I look for is with injuries is cluster injuries at a position or a grouping of a position. So, like if a team's missing like 3 linebackers, I look at okay, can the other teams take advantage of that? Or team's missing 3 receivers and they're going against a tough secondary. It's like, how are they going to throw? So that's what I look at with injuries. It's all a piece of the pie to me, as you said. There's as I said, start with the spread because that's the first thing you see, and then obviously the injuries have to be last because you won't know them until late Friday or Saturday or even sometimes Sunday. And then you said situation, and then there's matchups, and then it's kind of like a general weakness as well. I look at that too. How I like to handicap games is kind of, and I kind of I guess I sort of handicap football like I do buying stocks or really options. Whereas I try to make like a bear case because I like to buy a lot of puts on companies that suck. And that's what I do with handicap football. Like I try to find the weaknesses. I think a lot of people just still, who are the best teams? I'm like, who are the worst teams in this situation each week? And like, how could it just seems like they're just going to just really struggle to do anything. And so I kind of start at the bottom of my power rankings and work my way up. Like, what are the teams in the worst situations, or like the worst 5 teams this week, or et cetera. So I think that's something else too. Obviously you're not going to look at that here because both these teams are in the top 5 in the league. I think everyone would agree with that. So you can't really do that here. Which makes it unfavorable. And by the way, something you brought up was interesting. You said there's a lot more parity parity this year, I think, because
I think you used the word mediocrity.
Mediocrity, yes. This year because the top teams aren't nearly as good as the top teams from last year. But it's funny because it seems like the worst teams are even worse this year because the teams that were favored by more than 10 this year are 18-12 against the spread. So you would think that if the top teams weren't as good, it would be that would be 500 or worse. But is that actually they covered at a high rate? It just shows you how bad the Brady Cooks of the NFL were and the Quinn Ewers of the NFL were, the Max Brosmers. We had a lot of terrible quarterbacking this year. I loved that. As a guy who loves puts, I can tell you I loved seeing these terrible quarterbacks. I hope we get more of it next year. I hope Brady Cook's a starter somewhere next year. That's my wet dream. So
I don't think I want to see Brady Cook at all.
I even if he's in the CFL, I want to fade him. So Seattle had more of a softer schedule in New England. They play the 49ers defense. Yeah. I mean, look, you can there's nuance to everything here for sure. Andy says you have to have the Jets and Raiders group even lower, which I think is true. I think the Jets were just an abomination. They had no chance to win anything once they named Brady Cook as the starter. I mean, they were tanking blatantly. Tyrod Taylor was healthy, and they could have put him in. No, we're gonna go with Brady Cook. So they were even worse. So anyway, I asked you that question about if your stats factored into the playoff games factor in your stats. Because, I was looking at, and you mentioned this, and it is absolutely true, that the Patriots, they faced the gauntlet of incredibly tough defensive teams in the playoffs. Chargers were ranked number 4 in EPA, Texans were number 2, and the Denver, and I will maintain that they're a paper tiger, but I do agree. You said they're above average. I agree. I had them I think they're 11th or 13th in EPA, which would make them above average, but I call them paper tiger because people think, they're the best team in the NFL, the best defense in the NFL, but they're not, but that game was played in extremely tough conditions. So the Patriots had what I would say three tough games for their offense. But if conversely though, their defense, and I mentioned this to Sandy last night, except for a game against the Steelers, they couldn't have asked for an easier path for the defense. They going backward, they played against Jarrett Stidham in the snow, which Denver couldn't score at all in the fourth. I feel like if that fourth quarter was 80 minutes, they couldn't have scored a single point. The week before that, CJ Stroud, who looked lost and probably should have been benched with no Nico Collins and no Dalton Schultz. And then the week before that, Justin Herbert played with an injury with no offensive line. And even extending that to the regular season, the week before that, they had Quinn Ewers. The week before that, they had Brady Cook. The week before that, they had Tyler Huntley, who did play well, but still Tyler Huntley. And then you had the Buffalo. So they haven't faced a good offense since that second Buffalo game.
That's very true. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because of that, you can kind of take the stats and say, you know what, these are meaningless. Mm-hmm. But if I asked you, do you think New England's defense is great, good, mediocre, or bad? What would you answer?
I think the stats say that they are great. Like you said,
you just established that the stats are generally, and I agree, meaningless because they played in a blizzard and they played against a quarterback that was imploding and another quarterback without an offensive line, and then Quinn Ewers. So a lot of those stats need to be thrown out the window. But your eye test, as you watch them play the last couple of weeks, despite the conditions, despite the QB play, if you had to say, starting a season, this defense is bad, average, good, or great, where would you think? What would you predict based on the eye test?
Right now, you mean?
Right now. Would you say this is a good defense, an average defense, or you can cop out and say, well, they're unproven?
I wouldn't cop out. I think they are a good defense. I don't think they're a great defense. I don't think they're Seattle. I don't think they're Texans. I don't think they're Chargers. I think they're probably on the level of Denver, like 11th or so. If they're like 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, they're probably in that range. So
overall, so I was looking at just PFF, and I generally don't even look at some of these PFF numbers, but overall, PFF has the Rams number 1. They have Seattle number 2. They have New England number 4. Just an overall. From a defensive perspective, just an overall defense, they have the Rams number 1, Houston number 2, which I find interesting because I would say Houston's number 1. I don't think I mean, this is a season-long statistic. This kind of is where you throw out numbers like, all right, the Rams are not the best defense. We all know that.
Yeah, right.
They have Houston number 2, Seattle 3, Cleveland number 4, and New England down at number 7.
Okay.
So they have New England closer to number 10, Seattle closer to the top. So I agree with you. Listen, I think we can all look at the teams that were played and say, you can't prove based on the statistics that they're the best or second best or fifth best or whatever. But the eye test tells me, especially with Milton Williams back, that New England, and with Vrabel, because I think Vrabel is a fantastic defensive coach. And I think the coaching matters a lot, especially when you have multiple weeks to prepare. That doesn't mean I think McDonald's a very good coach too. I didn't like earlier in the season that McDonald was less aggressive, but I thought 2 weeks ago he was very aggressive, especially late in the game when they needed first downs. He was throwing sometimes to a fault, even on second down, where I thought for sure he's going to come out running the ball and he would throw. So give him credit for in the biggest of games, he was foot on the gas, aggressive. And then you go look at a guy like Ben Johnson, who's a big talker, who says, oh, we're going to go for 2. We're going to go for 2. And then he's at home and he's tied or he's down by 1 and there's 15 seconds to go. And you know what? My offense is kind of shaky in short yard situations. And he's right. They were. And they were like a 25% team, which is why they ended up with so many fourth down situations. But he took the loser route and kicked an extra point and said, let's go to overtime. So I thought McDonald 2 weeks ago was very, very aggressive. And somebody commented before, Vrabel has a tendency potentially to not go for like a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2 at midfield. But I think coaching absolutely will matter. I think coaching, Vrabel has done an incredible job, especially on the defensive side. And I look at this New England defense and say, you know what? Forget number 1 or number 2. I think they're a very good defense. Are they the best defense like Houston? No. Are they a very good defense? I believe they are. And you also look at teams, and again, to my point on spreads being so drastic, I saw a bunch of talking heads this week or last week saying, why isn't Seattle, if they win, considered one of the best teams of all time? I mean, are we serious right now? Seattle is one of the best teams of all time? Seattle is not one of the best teams of all time. Sam Darnold played great 2 weeks ago. I'm not ready to put Sam Darnold in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not ready to put this defense on the level of the top defenses of all time. And I'm definitely not putting their offense in the top offenses of all time. Like, what are we talking about? Seattle's now one of the best teams of all time because they dominated a banged-up Niners team and then won a shootout that was a coin flip game against the Rams. That's crazy talk. Everybody likes to talk about history, the best team of history, best team ever, or top 5 team ever. Look at DVOA and all this nonsense that people like to look at. And it's utterly a joke, which is why I even more so think that the spread is a mistake, because I think you have the public thinks that the Seahawks are so much better than what I think they really are. And I'm not saying they're not one of the top teams this year. They are one of the top teams this year. And they're better than New England right now this year. But to say that they are so much better and historically great is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But generally, you have talking nonsense. And to be fair to Darnold, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame, but Belichick didn't get in either. So it may be maybe it's not a fair barometer.
Well, they don't have a lot of Pro Bowlers like the Browns.
Of course, yeah. I mean, well, when you have Shedeur Sanders and Joe Flacco, how can you possibly compete? And by the way, like what a tough thing for Monken. Like he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Like he's expected to I think at least get to the divisional round next year. So yeah, it's a tough spot for him. But you always have talky heads saying nonsense all the time. I feel like with 2 weeks they had nothing to talk about. I think today I can't remember who said it. It was someone in the gambling world. I can't remember who it was, but they're like, do we really need 2 games between the championship games and the Super Bowl? I feel like we're running out of things to talk about. Let's just play the game, which is certainly true. And of course, we had ESPN nonsense tonight, which with the awards they had something to talk about. But anyway, so we will disagree on the spread. I have Seattle 7 points better than the average team. I'm doing them at 3 points better than the average team. So I have those four spots apart, and I guess our difference is with their defense. You say they're very good. I say they're good. I think Milton Williams is incredible, and as Cassandra pointed out, I don't know if Cassandra is listening, but Cassandra pointed out 2 days ago. So Cassandra says, like, Walt, you mentioned Milton Williams like 10 times in your write-up, which is like probably even less than I did. So I mean, he is extremely important to that team, and when he was out, the Patriots defense is certainly worse. But I think with his return, that means a lot. But and also, like you said, like Vrabel is an incredible coach, so he's going to put his team in the best positions. But I still don't think they are in the top 7 or 8. Like I think they're like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, something like that. Whereas like Seattle, they're number 1 in defensive EPA. They had the number 2 pressure rate in the NFL. Only Denver had more quarterback pressures than them. They're number 2 against the run. They have great play in their secondary. Their only weakness is against tight ends. And, obviously New England can exploit that. McDaniels, I'm sure, is going to be all over that. But New England has that liability as well. New England's not good against tight ends either. And New England has some issues on top of that. So, I think if you were to rate the 4 units, which we did yesterday, how would you rate the 4 units in this game? Seattle offense, defense, New England offense, defense.
If I had to rank the 4 units, I'm probably taking Seattle's defense as the best unit on the field. Mm-hmm. I would probably say Seattle's offense is the second best unit on the field, followed by New England's defense and then New England's offense.
I think that's how I rated it yesterday too.
So I definitely think that Seattle's defense is better. Seattle's offense is better than New England's offense. Listen, I agree with Seattle being the favorite. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. So, and I think they've proven throughout the season, despite what we talk about in the schedule, they are, I think, the better unit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to. And I'm trying to kind of go back and forth without giving away my pick. But at the end of the day, I think there are a bunch of very important key factors that are not necessarily which is the better unit on the field. So I do think Seattle is the better unit. Seattle's defense is definitely the best unit on the field. Does that mean they're going to dominate? No, it doesn't mean they're going to dominate. I mean, they're a better unit. They're better overall. But I also think you can counter that by saying, I think Vrabel and the Patriots coaching staff is the better coaching staff, which I think matters in a game with 2 weeks to prepare. And I think the question overall is not going to be like which team is a better unit, or I think there's a couple of key factors in this game that are very, very interesting, especially, and I'll get to the last one later, which has to do with Seattle's defense, that I think could really be something to pay attention to. But I mean, is when you look at the units overall, is that something that you use to really handicap the game, or are you just pointing out in general that Seattle's better, the defense of Seattle's best unit on the field?
Oh no, I was just talking. We're talking about New England's defense and such. So I think it's important. I mean, point to note that Seattle's defense is definitely better than New England's defense. As you said, the best unit on the field. New England's defense like 3rd out of 4. I think they could be close with the offense. I think, but I would say the offense would definitely be in last place. Forget about special teams. Both special teams have been awesome. Seattle and New England have had great special teams. This is not like the Rams are playing, where right. New England, if it was Patriots Rams, like Patriots special teams would have a huge edge. But both special teams are fantastic, and he says there's not a huge gap between the first and the fourth unit. That's true. Yeah, that's true. But Seattle's defense versus New England's offense is, I think that is definitely an edge Seattle has. And you're talking about key factors in this game, and I think it's a good place to start for me. I mean, like what I'm worried about if I were backing New England is like, can Drake May not take 5 sacks again? And can he not fumble? Like that's the big factor for me. And Seattle had like I said, they had the second most quarterback pressures in the NFL. They didn't have the most sacks, but I think pressures are more indicative of how much you can get to a quarterback and rattle a quarterback. And May has been sacked 5 times in every game in the playoffs, and he's fumbled a lot. And so if he gets pressured often, which I think will happen, like, a big turnover could just completely alter this game. And, especially if this game not a shootout, like, if you fumble in a shootout, you can get the points back. But if this is like a 16-13 game, 20-16, 21-14, something like that, like that could be really costly, because that could just lead to points, and points that are a premium in a defensive matchup. So, how do you feel about that? Like, do you think
pressure? Yeah, pressure is obviously. I mean, I didn't actually put it down this year, and like I did last year, as my main key factor. But let's look at pressure from a couple of weeks ago. I mean, May was pressured 11 times. He only completed 3 out of his 5 pass attempts. You mentioned the 5 sacks that he took. That's not good. And he does have the ability to scramble. I'll get back to that in a minute. New England was able to pressure Stidham 19 times, and that offensive line is very good. And that offensive line is flush with Pro Bowlers to protect the Shedeur Sanders. But I don't really care what Stidham was in that situation. 4 for 14 is not as relevant. The point is they got 19 pressures against that offensive line, and I think that's going to be very important for Seattle, for New England to get pressure on Darnold, who's not as immobile. He did have a couple of big runs. How many runs did he have? Did he have 1 run in that game? Let me see real quick. Seattle, Darnold ended up with 3 carries for 9 yards. So he actually moved a little bit. Give him a little bit of credit, because for the season, he only had 35 carries for 95 yards for the whole season. So 3 carries in 1 game, getting out. If he has to move around, it's not like he's Kirk Cousins back there, but he's also not Josh Allen, Mahomes making real plays with his legs. Whereas May, I think that could be a factor if he's able to escape pressure. And when he was pressured a couple of weeks ago, he was very good. He did only convert 6 out of 13, but no picks. He had 3 touchdowns when he was under pressure, which is impressive. So he was able to make throws in pressure or against pressure. And they obviously got to they didn't get to Stafford that much. They only pressured Stafford 11 times. So I think that will be a key. But for me, you mentioned it. I mean, the number one factor here is turnovers. And to Darnold's credit, he's not thrown a pick or lost a fumble in the last 3 games, which are basically playoff games. Obviously 2 playoff games, and then week 18 was like a playoff game. So in week 18, he was clean. In the second game against the Niners, forget the fact that the Niners were not at full strength. That's okay. He still didn't get touched in that game. He didn't turn the ball over. He played a clean game. Last week against a team that he's never played well against, and especially in big games in general, Darnold's been known to give the ball away to their other side. He played a very, very clean, good, solid game in the last 3 playoff games. Whereas May, last week or 2 weeks ago, he didn't turn the ball over. He was still sacked 5 times, which is very concerning. He was really, really poor the game against the Chargers, just putting the ball on the floor right and left. Same thing for Houston. And by the way, I know he didn't throw a pick against Denver, but if you look at the first drive of that game, he should have thrown a pick 6 on the first drive of the game. Hufanga had the ball in his hands, and Diggs kind of broke it up. So that could have been a pick 6 going the other way, and we're not having this conversation right now. That's a very different outcome if he throws a pick six early in that game. So while the statistics say that he played a clean game, he really didn't, given that one massive turnover-worthy play. And that's obviously going to be the biggest factor in this game is the turnovers. If Darnold implodes and turns the ball over 3 times, or if May implodes and has a pick or a pick six and puts the ball on the ground 1 or 2 times, that's going to change the outcome of the game. And we're going to have a conversation next week. Well, the teams were basically even, but there were 3 plays in the game. May turned the ball over. May had 2 turnovers. Darnold had none. And if May has 2 turnovers and Darnold has none, I'm confident in telling you that Seattle's probably going to win that game. And wouldn't be surprised if they won that game by 10-plus points if they win the turnover margin by 2 or more. So obviously protecting the ball with a young second-year quarterback and a quarterback in Darnold who's got a history of being a little bit of a turnover machine, that to me is obviously going to be the biggest factor. But the reality is he really can't handicap turnovers because that's probably the handicap of every single football game ever to be played. Well, if you win the turnover margin, you're probably going to win. Well, thanks. So if we take turnovers out, there's a couple of things that I look at in this game that I think are really, really important. And starting with 3rd and 4th down conversions, both teams throughout the season were pretty much identical percentage-wise. 4th down, New England was number 2 at 72%. Seattle was number 13, 58%. But when it comes down to 4th downs, this is where I like May better than Darnold. It's the ability to run and pick up the first downs with his legs, the way he did last week to end the game, or 2 weeks ago to end the game, and the way he also did in the red zone, where he was able to take a snap and pick up 6 yards inside the 10, where those yards, that quarterback running ability is really, really important. Now, if you look at overall, where's my numbers here? I'm just looking. So for the season against Seattle, Cam Ward had 6 carries, 37 yards, and a touchdown. These are running quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, 10 carries, 51 yards, a touchdown. Lawrence, who's a running quarterback, only had 3 carries for 9 yards, and Baker was only 5 for 15. Kyler Murray, in one of his games that he played, 5 carries, 41 yards. So when I look at the overall 3rd and 4th downs, and then, of course, rushing, we know Seattle is probably the best team, if they're not the top 2 team, against the run. But they've this year had a couple of games that Cam Ward, Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, where they gave up. They had a little bit of a propensity to give up some of those big rushing plays. And I think when it comes to 4th down conversions or even 3rd down conversions, the fact that May can run and use his legs to do that, I think that's something that we really want to pay attention to. And talking about ladders and how we've made a living over the last couple of months and weeks of the season, I think if New England is down, we absolutely need to look towards May rushing. I wouldn't necessarily go crazy with this pregame or ladder it pregame, but if they're behind, this is something that we need to look at because we know Seattle's going to get pressure and may look to put the ball, tuck the ball away. And even on design runs, they may look to utilize him with his legs a little bit more than obviously Darnold. And I think that gives New England a little bit of an edge on 3rd and 4th down.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with Drake May rushing if they're down. And yeah, I was asked that if are we going to ladder this? I said, yeah, if they're trailing. So
if they're trailing, yep.
Yeah, and which we would do about the 4-minute mark of the second quarter if we think the Patriots are going to get the ball back, especially if they're going to punt, and hopefully it's a commercial, so we can get the picks in and tweet it out. we need the time, which hopefully we get because they do have a lot of commercials during the Super Bowl, of course. So yeah, that's when you do that. If you like running back receptions, Walker has caught 7 passes combined past 2 games. That's when you would do it as well. Otherwise, I like doing the other stuff at halftime. Just based on the script. And of course, I know you're going to be 100% agree. We have to ladder Hunter Henry. I know you don't like it, but I still will do it. But given how bad Seattle is, like I said, Seattle's just so bad against tight ends. I'm crazy enough to bet Jack Westover to score a touchdown in this game. So I wouldn't say that's a factor. Like Seattle's gotten this far being bad against tight ends. And New England's bad against tight ends too. So I think Barner could have a good game too. May will have the most rushing yards. Probably. I hope so. I have I have two of my three trifectas are with Drake May having the most rushing yards. So I would love to see that. So, all right. Are there any other factors that you wanted to talk about before
yes.
we do our picks?
And I wanted to give you the factor that ties into your Hunter Henry passing, because this is my biggest reason if I'm looking at the Seattle side. And this is downfield passing in general. And for the season, it's actually interesting both ways, because these teams, I want to look at the numbers just to kind of throw out some numbers here. For the downfield passing, New England for the season, 8.6 yards per pass attempt, Seattle 8.5. Only Buffalo was at 8 or over, and they were exactly at 8. Downfield passing defense, Seattle number 3, 5.7 given up, New England number 4, 5.8. So you have a similar strength for both teams downfield passing for both sides, defense and offense. But then you talk about, and this I have to give credit to Warren Sharp, whose last name is not really Sharp. He was the one who brought up an interesting point about Seattle playing a cover 6, okay? And Seattle plays a lot of cover 6, which if you're not familiar with cover 6, half the field generally to the field side is basically quarters. And then to the boundary, to the short side of the field, you're looking at cover 2. So what's the weakness of a cover 2? So for anybody who doesn't really understand how a cover 2 works, cover 2 is when the corners kind of drop into the flat and the safeties take the deep part of the field. Or in this case, when you're splitting the field in half, it's to the boundary side. So what's open? We all know from playing Madden from back in the day, when you're playing cover 2, what's open? The seam. Who's running up the seam? The tight ends. So if Seattle has any weakness in their downfield passing defense, which happens to be excellent, top 4, top 5, whatever you want to call it, right? PFF actually has Seattle, New England 1 and 2 in their downfield passing from a coverage perspective. But what is open? The seam, the tight end. That's going to be the whole shot that May has to be able to recognize, and May has to see that as a potential Hunter Henry downfield passing, because that's going to be open when they play cover 6. Now, what do I mention Warren Sharp? Well, Warren Sharp talked about how the Bills played cover 6 in their game against New England 50% of the game, which is astronomically high. Like the league average is under 10%. But Buffalo found something, and Sean McDermott found something, that they played 50% cover 6 in that game and really flustered May big time. Because May in that game, let me pull up the numbers, and this is, again, credit to Warren Sharp for pulling this out. May was, where is my numbers here for the cover 6 game? Let's see here. In week 5, the Bills lost to Drake May playing cover 6 only 12%. They upped it from 12% to 50%. In that game, May averaged, and you're an EPA guy, I don't really follow this, but again, I'm quoting Warren Sharp, negative 0.34 EPA per attempt, 23% success, 4.3 yards per attempt, 64% completion, and of course he threw a pick. So did not play well recognizing this cover 6. The week later, Baltimore, who never plays that defense, did it again also 50% of the time, and May was bad, including throwing the pick in that game. Of course, then they came back. Seattle plays cover 6 the most in the entire league. So that's going to be something very, very important to notice, and they disguise it very well also. It kind of looks like a cover 3, which is basically 3 deep, covering the deep half of the field with 3, and then having 3 underneath and rushing 5. Or maybe rushing 4 and having a guy back off the line of scrimmage. So, and May, who's a young quarterback, needs to be able to recognize, he may think he's seeing cover 3. In reality, it might be this new cover 6, which again divides the field in half. And you have the cover 2, what's open, the seam. If he doesn't recognize it, he threw a pick against Buffalo in this. He threw a pick against Baltimore. And if he doesn't recognize it here, it could turn their downfield passing attack, which has been very good for them offensively, into a negative. And on the flip side of this, Darnold, who started the year off throwing more than 10 yards per attempt in 5 of his first 9 games. He was dominant. He was 10 plus. He was number 1. But I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. When I noticed this a couple of weeks ago, back half of the schedule, in his back 10 games, or 9 games at the time, now 10, 0 games of 10 or more yards per attempt. He was actually at 6.6 for the second half of the season. And for context, that's where Minnesota was for the season, number 25 in the league. So Darnold, first half of the season, unbelievable throwing the ball downfield, then took a step back towards kind of the lower part of the league. But to his credit, let's look at recent history. 9.6 yards per attempt 2 weeks ago, clean game, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He was fantastic against the Rams, who may not be great, but it's a huge game. And it's a back and forth game, and they needed all the offense they can get to close out on that game. So while first half of the season, Darnold was unbelievable throwing downfield, then he kind of tailed off a little bit. That's going to be a massive factor that I think favors Seattle. And if he can throw the ball deep, and we believe he'll take shots, the question is, can New England's very good long defense, and why are they really good? Well, maybe like you said, maybe it's because they played Quinn Ewers. Maybe it's because they played the Jets a bunch of times, right? So maybe it's because they played in a blizzard against Jarrett Stidham or against Stroud, who couldn't hit the side of a barn. So maybe their defense, their downfield passing defense, is not as good as we perceive them to be. And this is something we're going to see very early, because I think Seattle is going to come out aggressive, throwing the ball aggressively. And I think New England, as we predicted 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, I think they're going to be a lot more conservative, especially early in the game, throwing the ball, which is why we don't want to be laddering some of the yardage stuff until later. Yes, I know we can go in and do it. And I texted you last night a picture. DraftKings limited me to like $35 or something on the combo for 475 combined yards. But I think that's a much, much better bet later in the game, because I believe, like last year with Hurts, even if Seattle is ahead, I believe they will still throw the ball. And if they're behind, they're definitely going to throw the ball. The question is, can New England now stop these downfield passing? Now, with New England, I don't think they're going to try to throw the ball downfield early. I think they'll be very, very conservative. But if they have to later, they will be. And the question there becomes, can May recognize what Seattle's doing, maybe playing a very high rate, well above average rate of cover 6, where you're right, Hunter Henry might be open. That might be the guy like, what's his name? Like Colston Loveland was being just targeted nonstop in that against a similar defense with Green Bay or against Green Bay in that game. Caleb Williams was just nonstop. That was the open shot. Can May see that and recognize that's the play that's open? Or is he going to dink and dunk and take the ball into the flat? Because that's really what they're trying to give you. They're taking away the deep third of the field, and they're forcing you to throw the ball into the flat. And if they take away that downfield passing attack, I don't really see how New England's going to consistently move the ball without hitting some of those deep threats. That's how they've moved the ball all year. If they can't do it in this game, it's going to be a very tough game for them to move the ball.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. We'll see if they attack the seam. They recognize that. Hopefully they do. Because I already bet Hunter Henry over, because the number was low. It's like 36.5. Like Jake Tunges had 59 in the first half. The divisional round game. So it's the 36.5 seems very doable, but I did want to wait on the ladder for that. So
yes.
So I think that's certainly a smart move, because if the Patriots are up 21-0, like they were against the Bills, if they had a defensive touchdown and like they hit a big play and they're up, and like Seattle and like Darnold throws a pick or something and suddenly they're up 21-0, like you don't want to have Hunter Henry over on the ladder, because that's just dead, So it really depends on the game flow and stuff. And so if it's neutral or they're behind, I think in the second half or at halftime, I think I would want to go Henry over on the ladder. If people are saying McDonald's going to disguise everything, yeah, McDonald's just he's awesome. But I mean, both coaches are fantastic defensively. So that's why I currently have this game going under. I have this game combining for 41 points, whereas the total is 45. So, but I'm not in the big totals better anyway. So this is not like a big play for me at all. I'm not going to bet the total. So, but I do think under is more likely than over. So, I mean, we're about an hour and a half into the show. Do you want to get into our picks here?
Well, there's two more things that I wanted to bring up before we go into picks. So one is obviously somebody mentioned McDonald on the disguise. They run a lot of stunts on the line, and that would concern me with Will Campbell. Obviously, you got a rookie on the line, may or may not be 100%. Again, I don't want to bring injuries into the equation, but that's something that like Nick Benito, absolutely blasted him last week. Gets off the ball right away, and right away there's a sack. It's like May had no chance. And we saw that against Houston as well. where Will Campbell he wasn't up to the task. And that's that was against Anderson and 2 weeks ago against Benito. So he's had a little bit of a struggle for the last couple of weeks, and I think they can take advantage of that rookie by confusing him. Listen, the Niners lost the Super Bowl because they couldn't defend Chris Jones coming through the line when it's third down on the 8-yard line, and you get a free rusher, Chris Jones, of course, of all people, on a stunt, coming right through and forcing Purdy to throw the ball away. And then, of course, Shanahan kicks a field goal, and that's all she wrote. So, you have a couple of those big third down, third and goal, fourth and goal situations where if they can't protect May in those situations because Will Campbell is not prepared for the stunts and twists, that's going to be a major, major problem and something to look at and watch for, especially in big plays. And we saw this against Denver with Buffalo on some of those big third downs when they sent pressure or they sent an extra rusher. Denver had no chance. They didn't know what they were looking at. And that's why I was so annoyed on some of the plays that they did make where, like, why are you not sending pressure? Why are you forgetting to send pressure? So it's something that I like to look out for. Obviously, you can't rush and you can't blitz 100% of the time, but there are big plays, and Spagnuolo has been known for this, just dialing up the right blitz, the right stunt in that right big third down moment. And if that can force a turnover or a big sack on a third and medium that forces a punt or a field goal, those are the massive plays in this game. And this game is going to come down to those 5 or 6 plays. Forget the turnovers, because we can't really predict the turnovers. But the downfield passing, to me, and some of the line of scrimmage play, confusing May, could really come down to it. Now, before we get into the pick, there's really one other thing that I was looking at, and that's kind of a trend. And I mentioned last night because I saw you and Andy start talking about trends. And I said, I really don't like trends, right? But I think it's important to kind of just take a look at it because it's really something that you want to uncover all stones and really see if there's anything that matters here. And I brought this up and I kind of mentioned to you because you were talking, I think Andy was talking about dogs in general, but I went back and I was looking, I kind of split the history of the NFL, 1967 to 2000, and then 2001 until present day. So, and I wanted to see, it wasn't just about dog versus favorite. I wanted to see how many games were lined at 3.5 or more. Okay. So the former, the earlier part of the NFL history, and it's a good barometer to take 2001. I know some people say 2007 or 2012. Like historical NFL to me is much different than now. Parity wasn't right there. So 34 games from 1967 to 2000, 76%, so 26 out of 34 games were lined at 3.5 or greater.
Okay.
76%. In the last 25 years, only 13 games were lined at 3.5 or more, 52%. So a much, much greater in the history of the league between parity and other things of the like, where lines were 14, 9, 7, you had much, much bigger lines. The dogs in those 34 games, in those 26 games, I don't care about the games that were lined 1 to 3. Let's throw those out for now. Call those pick 'em. In games that were 3.5 or more, the dogs covered 7, 17, and 2. 7, 17, and 2. And straight up, dogs only won 4 out of 26 games. So a much, much different NFL. Mm-hmm. Recent NFL, called last quarter century, in the 13 out of 25 games, in the 13 games where dogs were 3.5 or greater, the dogs covered 11 out of 13 and won 7 out of the 13. So the dogs have an outright winning record, 7-6 again, straight up, and 11-2 against the spread. So why is this relevant? I was thinking, okay, is it a fluke? Does it matter? Do we care? Because I really don't like trends. I like to take trends and throw them out the window. I don't even look at them half the time. But I was looking at it here. I'm thinking, does this matter? Does this factor in? And if so, why? And I came to the conclusion that I think it does matter a little bit because, like I said earlier, I think there's a very close. You said there's 4 points of difference. You could say 4.5, 4, 3, whatever. The point is, it's not 14, it's not 10, it's not more than 7. I think these teams are much, much closer. And when you have 2 good teams, not great teams, 2 good, solid teams that are both well coached, I think the coaching will matter. where these games should be close. They should be close. I think they really should be close, and I absolutely think both teams could win. So when I look at the spread overall, forget who I think is going to win the game. When I look at the spread, based on the overall nature of my power rating, based on the fact that I think these two teams are very, very similar, they have very similar strengths and weaknesses overall, and the trend here that I think these games recently, in recent memory, are much, much closer than in the past, I think that matters a little bit. Dogs covering 11 out of 13 in spreads that are 3.5 or greater. Dogs winning more than they're losing, outright winners for 3.5 point dogs or greater. I think that really matters. And I think, to give it away now, I would take the 4.5. I would absolutely take the 4.5. And by the way, if this were a contest type of pick, I really like the 4.5. I like it at 3.5. Do I like it at 2.5? No, not at all. At plus 4.5, even plus 3.5, I think taking the points in this game is the right move. There's so many things here that give either team a chance to win that, to me, getting 4.5 points, I feel like I'm getting a good 1.5 to 2 points of value overall.
Okay, so as far as the I was doing a lot of thinking about this, the how the underdogs have covered a lot, as you just mentioned the numbers. Andy did as well last night. And okay, so kind of like anytime you see a trend, you have to ask yourself why. Like, is there a reason for this? Is it legitimate? Is the sample size large? And my first thought as a contrarian person who by puts, like when I hear something's 11-3, I think like, oh, what if it's 3-11 the next 14 games? Like what's to stop it from being 3-11? But I don't like trends at all. Like you say you don't like trends. I think I hate trends more than you do. I feel like trends are like a siren song. Like you hear it. You hear this great number. It's like, oh, it sounds so good. The next thing you know, you crash your ship and you're lost at sea. You just lose all your money in sportsbooks. So, and I was like, okay, so like, why does this happen? Is it fluky? Is it this like happenstance? Like why is it? And I was like thinking about some of these games, and I pulled up the records here with the spreads, Super Bowl history. I'm like, I think some of these games, the incorrect team was favored. Like last year, the Chiefs are favored. The Eagles are clearly a better team. Like I remember ending the game, I was like, I thought the Eagles were the better team. The Chiefs are favored.
I threw that game out because it's under 3. So I didn't even use that in my study.
I'm just saying in general. So like, I'll get to that. Like Niners Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs were going to win that game. I thought the Chiefs were better. They have the best quarterback, best coach. I thought the Chiefs were going to win that game.
Niners should have won that game multiple times.
They could have. I thought Mahomes is going to lead them to victory. Eagles Chiefs, I thought that was even, and so like moving onward to the favorites, the teams that were favored by more than 3.5. Like I'm looking at like, well, the first one we get to is Rams Bengals. I thought those teams were very close. And so I thought that line was off. Patriots Eagles. The Eagles were definitely the better team that year. The only reason it's 4.5 is because of Nick Foles, but it's only one player, granted, quarterback. But like the Eagles all year were far better than the Patriots or any team in the AFC. I mean, the Patriots almost lost to the Jaguars in the AFC Championship. Like the Eagles were definitely better. Panthers, Broncos, I liked the Broncos in that game. I thought that was an even game and the line was just off. So, is it the underdogs covering because of some weird cosmic thing, or is it because there's more parity or whatever? I think these lines are incorrect. Like, I think that's what it comes down to. And you think this line's incorrect as well. So I could see why you're on the Patriots. But I think this line is correct. So like and I think Andy last night had Patriots as well, Seahawks as well, like -4. I think he said -4.3 is what.
But Andy had the Patriots winning by 6.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I'm just talking as far as the line is concerned. Like, is this line's correct? And whatnot. But my point is, like, I think it's correct. And Andy did as well. And I'm sure some people think this line should be even higher. And you and the people who picked the Patriots on the show, I'm sure they think the line should be lower. So, I guess we'll see. We'll see who's right. I don't know, but like again, if you play this game 100 times, each instance is going to be different than the other. So yeah, we won't really know. But I think the question you have to ask yourself is, are the Patriots is one team better? Is one team definitely better than the other? I'm not saying like is there like a big difference? Like there's like the Seahawks shouldn't be like -7, but I do think Seattle's better and you
agree with that. I think Seattle's better.
Right, you do too, because you said the two best units on this team on this game are Seattle defense and Seattle offense, and I agree with that. So I have Seattle. I think Seattle's like a tier above New England. Like I was like in my Group A through F, like Seattle's Group A and New England's Group B, and like I have Seattle as if they're 1A or 1B with the Rams. That means that I just have them 4 points better than the Patriots, and I think the spread is, even though it's a half point off, I still think it's correct. I do think we're going to see a 4 at some point. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're going to see a 4. So
I do not think we're going to see a 4 because the juice is -15 in most places to the Seattle side.
Yeah, but I think if the Sharps come in on a team, it'll be the Patriots. Like the Sharps haven't really come in the game yet, So if some big money comes in on a side, I think it'll be New England. Again, I could be wrong, but I do think that'll be the case. That's where the Super Bowl lines pick them to 3 or 4 no straight up. Yeah. But again, like I think the wrong team was favored in some of those games. So like the Eagles were the better team, even though they're dogs. But I don't think that applies in this game. I think Seattle's definitely a better team. So that's what it comes down to me. It's like I think Seattle's a better team, and yes, we have to lay the 4.5, but whatever. I still think Seattle's better. And I think that there is a potential big liability with Drake May, whereas like he can make huge plays and with his legs, and he's awesome. Hunter Henry should have a big game, but I feel like if there's a quarterback who's going to make mistakes in this game, I think it's going to be Drake May against the number 1 EPA or number 2 EPA defense in the NFL, whereas Sam Darnold's going against the number 10 defense in the NFL, and Darnold has been very clean since he had a couple of horrible games in the middle of the season, but in general, he's been awesome lately. And so, unless like he starts seeing ghosts again for some random reason, I really do think that Drake May, if there's gonna be a quarterback who costs his game with the turnover, it's gonna be Drake May. And we have evidence of that in the playoffs. There's 5 sacks in every game, fumbles all over the place. Seattle gets pressure on the quarterback extremely well. I just think Seattle is a big advantage in the trenches, and we saw the difference in that last year. And I don't think it's as big of a disparity. Like the Chiefs' offensive line was a disaster. The Patriots' offensive line is definitely not a disaster. It's not great, but it's okay. Seattle's offensive line, I think, is definitely better than the Patriots, especially the tackles are great. Greg Zabel at guard, their center is not really that good, but still, overall, Seattle's offensive line is better. So they have the better line, they have the better pass rush, they have the safer quarterback. I think coaching is, you could maybe give an slight edge to Vrabel, but I think the coaching is pretty even to me. And so, I think Seattle just has, and overall, like I said, they're the better team. So I have Seattle winning 24-17, covering the 4.5. I do think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be under, like I said, I think it'll be more of a defensive battle, even though I think we'll see more passing out of Drake May than we've seen, just because like he'll have to pass. Like he's been ahead every game in the playoffs. He hasn't had to do much. So I do think we'll see better statistics from these teams, or the Patriots at least. But I do think that Seattle win a close game. Like I thought about 23-17. I went with 24-17. But really, I think Seattle will cover the 4.5.
It's funny you mentioned offensive line. Do you remember how many stars in your write-up preseason you
No,
gave each of these offensive lines?
it was had to be horrible because Charles Cross, I believe. Charles Cross is great, but the right tackle Lucas, he's been so banged up over the years, and you don't know where you're going to get with Zabel as a rookie, right? So that was a mystery, and I think that's why it's at least part of the reason why I kind of misjudged Seattle, and I think everyone did, because if you took this exacta, you would be an extremely rich man right now.
Let me see what the exacta is. These are the Super Bowl results.
The exacta for
this is from the Westgate exact Super Bowl results. Where are we here?
Okay.
Let's see.
Can I
Patriots.
guess?
Okay, so Patriots beat Seahawks.
I'll say
3,000 to 1.
I know someone who I don't know. Someone I heard someone
3,000 to 1, and Seahawks beating the Patriots
2,500 to 1.
2,500 to 1.
Wow!
Courtesy of the Westgate Superbook back in August.
Wow!
So you had a 2-star for Seattle, and you had 2 stars for New England.
Mm-hmm.
PFF, who I like to look at for offensive line grading, had Patriots 29th, Seattle 30th.
Yeah.
And Warren Sharp, who I also look at for his preseason analysis when it comes to offensive lines, his pool of people had Patriots 27, Seattle 30.
Yeah.
There you go. And my key factor, in my own little personal notes, my key factor for overall Seattle, I wrote Darnold with bad O-line, new offense.
Yeah. They were not promising to start the year. Can you imagine if you bet $100 on both ways? Well, exactly, you'd be looking at $250,000 or more. That'd be incredible. I heard someone bet $5 on one of the exactas. I can't remember who it was. I saw it. Like, it was someone's girlfriend or something, like one of the players' girlfriends. I think it might have been Drake May's girlfriend. I can't remember who it was, but someone bet $5 on it. They were going to win a lot, and I was like, what if they bet 100? Like I bet 100 on every exacta I bet. Like, what if I went that way?
I should have picked this exacta. Well, listen, I acknowledge that Seattle's a better team. They have the better units. They're the better team. They're rightfully favored. Mm-hmm. I don't think they should be rightfully favored by 4 points. So to me, the spread becomes relatively easy. I thought from day one, this line should have been closer to 3, maybe 3.5. Maybe 3.5. Once I start getting up there, I don't agree with the spread. And I think both teams are, I think New England's a live dog to win the game. I always ask myself, when I'm looking at an underdog between 3.5 and 6.5, or even 3.5 and 7, is this a team that I think can actually win the game? I think New England can win the game. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute that New England could win the game. You're not going to be surprised if New England wins the game. If this game is played 100 times, can New England win 40 of those 100 times? 4 out of 10? I think absolutely. I think the cover, where I disagree, I think they covered this line closer to 60%, which is where I think I have an edge. So if you told me the line is 2.5 or 3, I wouldn't even bet it. And I'm not going to bet the money line at plus 200 because that's not the way I play. I have props. I like live betting props. I will live bet the game. Now, I did go into the game. I have plus 4.5 at minus 105. So I did bet that. I don't care if it was plus 5 and I missed out. I'd rather bet plus 4.5 minus 105 anyway. And if I see a better number mid-game early, because I do think Seattle will be the more aggressive team early. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go ahead early, but if they go ahead early and I think I have an advantage getting a 7.5 or a 10.5, I'll play that too. By the way, if New England takes an early lead and I have an opportunity to get Seattle either maybe at plus money on the money line or plus 3.5, I'll probably put that in my pocket also. That's just the way I bet. No. So I'm not going to sit here and say, you know what, I love this pick. It's the best pick of the year. It's not the best pick of the year. It would be a contest pick. I definitely think there's an edge to it. I think the line is off. And I think that the teams are relatively closer than a lot of people think. Now, as far as who do I think is going to win the game, while I think both teams could win the game, I'm still going to pick New England to win the game. And to me, it comes down to, I think both coaches are very good. I think Vrabel's the better coach. So I think that matters. And I think to me, the biggest factor of all my key factors is May's ability to run the ball. And May, I think, needs to run the ball to escape pressure, to pick up some of those third or fourth downs, to maybe score in the goal line. Whereas on the other side, Seattle, who wants to run the ball too, George Holani's a bum. He's not doing anything. And Kenneth Walker was great in the first quarter, but he doesn't play a whole game. He can't play a whole game. He has not been good when playing the whole game. Charbonnet has been a good change of pace. Walker has been solid. He was solid out of the backfield, but he kind of faltered a little bit late in the game, whereas like a Saquon Barkley, that guy gets stronger and stronger as the game goes on. Bijan, Derrick Henry. I'm not looking to go crazy with Kenneth Walker because I don't trust him late in the game when he's not accustomed to playing with the kind of snaps and the kind of heavy weight load, that workload that some of the other top running backs like Bijan, Henry, McCaffrey are accustomed to getting, Saquon are accustomed to getting. So for me, I don't think New England's going to be able to run the ball with Henderson or Stevenson, but I think May will make a huge difference. 50 to 60 yards, a couple of first downs. By the way, against Denver, he had 7, before his kneel downs, he had 7 carries. 6 of the 7 carries went for first downs or a touchdown. Yeah. So I think that's huge. It's a huge factor to be able to escape pressure and be able to pick up some of those plays in the red zone and in the goal line situation, third or fourth downs, Vrabel edge, and ultimately that cover 6, who can make an explosive play? Patriots are going to have an explosive play. That's been their MO all season. They're not going to win this game 17-13 or 10-7. I agree with your score range. I also like the under. I don't think this game is going to 47 to 51 plus points. I have this game, New England 23-20. I will say that at some point in this game, it's going to be 20-17 somebody. I don't know who. Somebody is going to be up 20-17. Now, you could be right on your original thought. Seattle's ahead, and they're able to come down and maybe kick a field goal. Nobody likes to go up by a 6, by the way. Bad move. But maybe there's a field goal that puts them up. Maybe somebody's down 23-20, and there's a game-tying field goal and then a game-winning field goal. Maybe somebody's down 20-17, and it comes down to, I think, one of your other Nuggets who predicted 24-20, and there's a touchdown that gives you the lead instead of the tie. So ultimately, I think the game is going to be a one-score game. I think it's going to be very, very close, low scoring early, maybe a little bit more late, fourth quarter, where maybe it's 10-7 at halftime, something like that. I don't think it's 14-10 at halftime. I don't think it's 17-10 at halftime. I think it's 2 or 3 scores in the first half. Low scoring. I even saw an actual score, an exact score for the first quarter, 0-0. It was like plus 750. It's not bad. It's not bad. We've seen a bunch of New England Super Bowls in the past that didn't have any points in it. So I kind of do like where you can maybe get that score 0-0 or 3-0. I don't really want 3-0, but 0-0, you never know. Maybe there's no scoring early, and maybe you can get a live bet on the over 2.5, something like that, for the first quarter. But I like a low scoring early game, some picked up scoring late, 20-17, somebody in the fourth quarter. And then let's see what happens. Can somebody, whoever's behind, tie the game? Can they take a lead? Can the other team come back? Is there time to come back? Is there time to run out the clock? New England's going to have to make an explosive play to win the game. They're going to have to protect the football to win the game. Turnovers, obviously, the biggest factor, as we discussed. But I'm going to pick the Patriots to win 23-20. I'm not going to bet the money line. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I love the pick. I'm getting 2-1. No, I'm not going to do that. I would take my 4.5. Vegas giving me points. I'll take my points. If I can get a little bit more points, 7.5, 10.5, I'll take those too. If New England jumps out early, 10-3, 10-0 maybe, heck yeah, I'm betting Seattle. I don't care what I'm saying now. I'm going to get value on Seattle. I'm going to get both sides of the game. I'll take plus price Seattle to win the game because I think that's obviously a very favorable number. I would love to have Seattle plus 3.5, New England plus 4.5. As a matter of fact, I bet already in one of my props, and we can go over that, I guess, next. Let's see what kind of props we both already have. Game decided by 3 points is plus 475. Not bad. I don't mind that. Almost 5-1 on the game being decided by 3. By the way, I also took game decided by 4 because I got 15-1, and I played game decided by 7 at 7-1 because I do think it's going to be a very close game, and I'll have one of those opportunities to maybe get into that 3-4-7 range. Why not take a flyer? So I think this game is going to be very, very close. I absolutely believe New England's a live dog. I love the points. Getting 4.5, I think, is a freebie by a good 1.5. I hope it's going to be a great game. I hope it's not what happened last year, but I will say that in games that I was really wrong on last year and Chiefs Tampa, those were my two most profitable Super Bowls by a landslide, because I was hammering last year Hurts ladders. This is where I got limited on FanDuel during the game.
I remember.
We lost the Saquon ladders, but we nailed the Hurts ladders, nailed the Mahomes ladders. I wasn't doing combo. I wish I was, but I wasn't doing combo in that time. I was just individually playing Hurts to keep throwing for yards and Mahomes to keep throwing for yards and team total overs, and it was just awesome. And the game, the Tampa Bay, Kansas City game, I ended up with a field bet. And the field was paid 20-1, I think, and I had it hedged with neither team to score 40, so I couldn't lose, and I hit both of them. Mm-hmm. And that paid about $13,000 on a no-risk bet, because 31-9 was a field, and neither team scored 40 points. So I have a bunch of those. They're not necessarily bets I can give out, because I'm playing in so many obscure places, various odds and totals with offshore or whatever, but they're not like, oh, you can give out, over 5.5 sacks. Cool, bet that. Or will the game be tied after 0-0? Great. Will be over 2.5 players will pass them. There's some of the other props that we can give out and we can talk about, but in games where I'm wrong, cool, I'm wrong. So what? Like I said to you a couple weeks ago, I think 1% of my action is on the spread right now. Mm-hmm. 99% of my bets, or I should say more than half my bets, will be live. And a lot of my bets now are on player props and ladder SGPs. So if you want to go in now and play like May to get 150 and Darnold to get 175 with a couple of simple Kenneth Walker 40-plus yards, JSN 50 or 60 receiving, you can ladder those kinds of things and get 2-1, 3-1, 5-1. That's where my action's at. Seattle SGP ladders, New England SGP ladders, combo SGP ladders, some of the props. But yeah, I have a couple of bucks on New England plus 4.5. I think it's a pretty good bet. And I'm going to go out and tell you that I think New England's going to win 23-20. Hopefully in overtime, because maybe I'll bet overtime plus 800 late in the game.
There we go. You gotta love the overtime. So everyone on this panel, everyone on the show who's been a guest is taking the Patriots. I am alone on an island and like in Seattle, and I should note we won't have a show tomorrow. Tom is traveling. He travels more than Magellan. This guy, he travels like all over the place. He said he would send me his pick. He did not, but I think he said he was going to send it tomorrow. So unfortunately, I don't have it right now. So I don't know, but I know he hates Seattle as a Packer fan. So I would guess he's on the Patriots, but I don't know. So yeah, what I like to do is, and I did this last year. It didn't work, but it'll work at some point. I like to bet the exact scores of everyone who has been on the show. So I will be betting 24-20 Patriots, 16-13 Patriots, 27-24 Patriots, 23-20 Patriots, and 24-17 Seahawks, and whatever score Tom gives me. So we'll see. I just for fun, nothing huge, like $10-25 here and there.
So now I have to bet 24-17 just for you, because I already have 24-20. Mm-hmm. And 23-20. I don't have 16-13. I didn't bet that. And I'm surprised Andy likes that many points. I think that's a lot of points. 27-24. I played 23-20, 24-20, 27-20, 27-23, 27-24 in both directions. Mm-hmm. And I played the field at plus 450, which is an absolute joke. Should be 20-1. I used to do this more as a guarantee hedged with neither team to score 40. Of course, they don't do that as well anymore. It's too expensive to bet neither team to score 40. So this is literally just for fun. And I have $25 on each of those scores. But hey, if any of them hit, like for example, what's your score? Your score is 24-17. I don't know what that number is, but my score, New England 23-20, I got it 80-1. So $25 pays 14. What is this? It pays more than 14.25. It pays 2,000, but I have it at 14.25 because then I deducted all the other crap that I bet on this chart. So if I get any of my 5 scores in either direction, pays out $1,000 to $2,000, somewhere in that ballpark. But yeah, this is for people to have fun with, right? And that's why I like the field, because the field is usually, there's a lot of games that fall into the field category. But you make sure that ultimately you know the rules of your sports book and make sure you know what all the scores are, so the field has actually a chance.
Where'd you get field with sportsbook?
Offshore.
Offshore. Okay. Yeah, because I couldn't find that on the FanDuel's, DraftKings, etc. Stanley says the Super Bowl could be 2-0 in a safety. Patriots winning. What about 6-1? Let's get a 6-1 score. I think that would be incredible. I think it was Andy was like, if they don't give you the field anymore, you have to request the score, and they'll give you line like. What would the sportsbook guy, the teller, say? Like, oh, I want 6-1. What odds can you give me? Like, I don't, 5 billion to 1. I don't know. Yeah. Read all the fine print on your props. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Andy texted me, by the way. He sent me a screenshot of the refrigerator Parry prop. Well, any player that weighs 300 pounds score a touchdown. It is looks like 30 to 1, I think.
That's not enough juice.
It's not. No, it's not.
I texted you a bet last night. You want to see what I texted you last night?
Mm-hmm.
What was the bet I texted you last night?
It was, wasn't it combined passing or something?
Yeah, you want to look at your phone and tell everybody what they allowed me to bet?
Yeah. So you tried to bet 600 plus passing yards at plus 760. By the way, I got at 8:30 earlier in the week. You were.
I was trying to bet $100.
Right. You got limited. The max stake for this bet is $10.68. What a joke! What a joke! DraftKings, such a joke. Yeah.
Proof.
No one,
if anybody can see it.
No wonder.
$10.68. I got limited on DraftKings once again.
Yeah, no wonder their stock is down the drain. $25 a share now. It's I don't know what they're doing at all.
If you're not getting limited on DraftKings, you're not playing the correct way. If you're playing correctly, you should be limited on DraftKings very quickly. That means you're taking too many parlays if they're allowing you to bet whatever you want to bet.
Well, you got to bet parlays.
You got to bet the parlays to camouflage, to make it look like you're a moron.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
What are some of the other props that you bet? Because I didn't take that many yet, but I have a whole list of things that I want to play. Anything specific that you played on the props? No, I'm not talking about Hunter Henry overs. I'm talking about like general game props.
I will pull that up in a second here. Okay, so I bet. Is this updated? I think it is. I bet some of these Triple Crowns. Drake May leading passer. Hunter Henry leading receiver, Drake May leading rusher. And funny enough, they offer it at 100 to 1 on FanDuel. But if you parlay May to be the top passer, Hunter Henry to be the top receiver, and May to be the top rusher, it comes out to be 110 to 1. So just make sure you're doing that because they're trying to rip you off or something, or they didn't calculate it correctly. So yeah, 110 to 1 for that. And I think that is a decent chance. Talk about Henry, great matchup. May, great matchup for the running. And then you're talking about May versus Darnold for passing. And I think he has a legitimate chance of hitting 110 to 1. And then if you flip the quarterback, if you go Darnold, Henry, May, that's 248 to 1. And again, like it's the same thing. If you just bet this, what they have is 225 to 1, but if you parlay, it's 248 to 1. And the reason why this is so dramatically different is the negative correlation with Henry being the top receiver for the Patriots, Darnold being the top quarterback for the Seahawks. But it could still happen, like Darnold could just spread the ball around and Henry could have a huge game. Henry had, I believe, 113 receiving yards against Cincinnati earlier in the year. It can happen. 248 to 1 for that. Like, sure. I think that's pretty good. And then the one I think is obviously way more likely to hit because it's only 17 to 1. And again, I believe this is 16 to 1, but the parlay made it plus 17-14. Was Drake May top passer, Hunter Henry top receiver, and Kenneth Walker top rusher. I think that's a decent chance of hitting. Obviously you have to dodge Jack Smith and Jigba, but it is a tough match for him in 2 of the 3 playoff games. 2 of the past 3 games, I should say. He hasn't really hit a ceiling. Obviously, he did against the Rams, but the different sort of defense here. And then my favorite guy, and this got bet down from 40-1 to 25-1. Someone bet this. I don't know if it's someone watching the show, but it was 40-1, and now it's 25-1. Jack Westover, the Patriots' third tight end / fullback. He plays about half the snaps each week. He runs about six or so routes each week. Tight ends can score. Tight ends tend to score. He's gotten targeted, I think, twice in the end zone this year. He hasn't caught a touchdown. I think this is his day. I think he's going to do it. We'll see. I don't know. It's just for fun. And the reason I bet this is because he was priced at 40-1 at the time I bet this. The other guys at 40-1 are not going to be active. It's like Dearness Johnson. It's like 40-1. Derek Young is 40-1. These guys don't play.
Right.
Like this guy plays. This guy plays half the snaps. Like, granted, he blocks a lot, but he sometimes runs routes. So yeah, I mean, compared to the other guys, 40-1's a steal. And apparently someone with a lot of money thought so because they bet it down to 25-1. So
there was an interesting one that I heard somebody play of Barner to get a touchdown. Granted, it's like plus 215. The premise was that he's the guy that takes the tush push.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
If they get the ball at the 1 yard line, they don't have Charbonnet. So it's very likely that they'll use Barner, and they could also throw to Barner. But the fact that he gets that tush push 1 yard run, it's something to look at. But I think Kenneth Walker is the guy to look at really because they give him the ball inside the 10 like every single time. To a fault. As a matter of fact, his touchdown last week, they gave him the ball 3 times in a row before he got the touchdown.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Barner plus 240 here. Yeah.
What is he? Barner plus 215. Yeah. And don't forget, we at some point we'll play the defensive scores. Now I'm looking, and I spent a while on this looking last night because you really have to find defense / special teams.
Yeah.
And I found defense / special teams. Caesars had, I think it was, what was this here? It was plus 400 for Seattle and plus 600 for New England. But that includes defense and special teams. If you just look at defense alone on FanDuel, the odds are much better. But if you want to hedge it with the no, and the best line I found also was Caesars at minus 290 on the no, you need better odds than plus 400 and plus 600. And then the parlay was 32-1. And again, it was the defense and that was on DraftKings. And on DraftKings, I can't bet. So somebody else will have to play that for me. But yeah, Pats, Seahawks, is it 32-1, 33-1? Okay, there you go. But the problem is the odds don't work because you can guarantee profit if one of them score, but if neither score, you have to risk a big number at minus 290 to cover the other plays, but you're still at risk. And the goal here is to find these numbers and manipulate the math so that you're going in with, at worst, a break even, and at best, a massive payout on the both. But again, you have to find it, and then you have to have enough of a credit line. If you're playing these not offshore, with FanDuel's DraftKings, you can't play on credit. So you're talking about a substantial outlay of your capital for potentially not much. The likelihood is you're going to win $0 to like $50. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, if you're putting up enough of a risk, if you're putting up enough of an outlay of your capital, and this is why you do this kind of last. You wait till the very end, and this is if you're not saving money for in-game live, you throw it out with a potential for a huge payday without any risk at all if both teams score a defensive touchdown. So I don't love it this week. We talked about this in the Denver game, which we liked. We talked about this with the New England-Houston game. But you never know. Darnold could throw a pick six. May could throw a pick six. It could happen. And here the defense or the special teams could score. Obviously, we saw Seattle a couple weeks ago with the initial kickoff return. But I haven't found it yet where the math fully works out. But I absolutely, at some point, even if it's just for a couple of peanuts, play the yes to both. And the yes to the scores, the defensive scores. And then parlay them just for fun. Because you get a kind of a really big pay. I don't know what the FanDuel number is. Remember, FanDuel's defense only, not special teams.
Yeah.
So it's like 50 or 60-1.
Yeah.
So that's something to look at.
Yeah.
But what do you think about some of these other props that I played? So I have both teams to make a 33+ yard field goal. Lay $1.30. What do you think about that? Your score suggests both teams kicking a field goal.
Yeah.
33 yards mean you're kicking from the 15 or later, or greater.
Right. Or 3/8, 8 plus 8 plus 8. I don't know.
No. 33. Each team has to make a 33-yard field goal or more.
Right. I mean, it'll suck if one of those field goals is a 30-yard field goal. Right. I think it's okay. I think it's more likely than not. But then -130 indicates that. I think it's a fair number.
-130. Okay. I played over 5.5 sacks for the game. -120.
Well, May's taken 5 sacks in every game, so seems like a good number, right? That feels like it should be like the over under should be like 6.5 almost. I don't know.
I thought 5.5 was fair. Will the game be tied after 0-0? I played yes at -120.
Yeah, I think more likely than not. Yeah, I think it's -120 is pretty good.
Second half plus overtime, more points in the first half, -$1.30.
I need to bet that. I always love to bet that one. I usually do.
I'm gonna put more on that. I like that a lot, especially.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, because the teams are so conservative in the first quarter. Yeah.
Over 2.5 players with a pass attempt on DraftKings. I actually bet this, but I got limited to $31.24.
Well, at least it wasn't $10.86.
It wasn't $10. I got it at $31.24.
Okay.
And then I had to play it again off short +135. So my blend on this is now +143. Andy mentioned he got +180 on this. I love this bet. I love it every single season. I take this every year without fail at plus price. And the reason, Andy, 15, not 16, 18 yards. And the reason I take this every year, and people say, oh, why do you bet this? It's so stupid. Most games don't have 3 players throwing a pass. Yeah, most games are not with 2 offensive coordinators pulling out all the stops with 2 weeks to prepare.
Right.
That's why I love this every single year. Or last year, you know how I won this last year? Because they brought in a backup quarterback at the very end.
Kenny Pickett.
Pickett threw a pass. That's how we won that bet last year.
He did. Anyways, that was incredible.
Here's a bet that you don't like. Both teams to score 19.5 or more points, plus points. So you don't have New England at 20. That's even money. I got that at even money.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that
one. You
one.
don't like that. I get it. And then I played the game decided by 3, 4, or 7.
Right.
Plus 475, plus 1,500, plus 700.
Why not 6? Because 6 is more likely than 4. Worst number?
I don't know. I just didn't, because it didn't fit into my score realm, right? Because I have the game 20-17, which means I think the game will be tied, or somebody will go up by 4, or the game will be tied and somebody will win by 3 or 7.
Okay.
But yeah, it could absolutely be 6. I just, at some point, you can't bet every number.
Right.
Yeah. So as well, I have the teams going by 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 13, 14, and 17. It's like, well, that's not the brightest.
Right. Yeah. I do of the props you mentioned. I like the second half more than the first half. It usually hits at a higher rate than what do you say, -130 or -120?
Yeah, I have it at -130.
130. Yeah, definitely it hits more than that indicates. So I do like that a lot. Are you considering any MVP bets?
No, I'm not playing any MVP bets. I think they're all sucker bets. I think the odds are awful.
Yeah,
I saw somebody wrote before about playing Darnold if you like Seattle. I completely disagree. I absolutely think that this game could have somebody like a JSN. It could have somebody like Kenneth Walker. It could have somebody on the defense if there's a big game. Listen, Darnold would not have won the MVP in the Niners-Seahawks game. So I don't know who would have won the MVP, but he would not have won the MVP in that game. 2 weeks ago against the Rams, he absolutely would have won the MVP. But this game, if there's a pick 6, if there's a fumble for a touchdown, if JSN goes crazy, if Kenneth Walker has a monster game rushing and receiving with 2 touchdowns, if this game is a low-scoring game and it's 21-17 and Kenneth Walker has 2 or 3 touchdowns, Kenneth Walker is going to win the MVP. Yeah. So I definitely don't like Darnold if you like Seattle. If you like Seattle and you're playing Darnold just so you can get odds, shame on you. Just play Seattle, lay the points, or lay the money line and find the best price you can. On the flip side of that, I think with May, once again, I mean, there it's less likely because I don't think there's one receiver that's going to go bonkers. But again, there's potential for defensive players to get it in this type of game if we are right that it's lower scoring. If it's a higher scoring game and Darnold throws for 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks, he's going to win the MVP. I just don't find any real value in anybody else. I'm not going to play Robert Spillane, people like that. I'm not going to play who else is out there.
Jennings,
Milton Williams. I'm just, it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to play those types of bets.
I think it's okay to spray like $10 here and there on these
defensive. Yeah, if you want to do it for fun, I think you're getting a real value.
Yeah. Well, the only value, and I think you'd agree, is Jack West over 801. Yes. Of course. Well, if he gets all the touchdowns, not just one. I love it.
I'm looking at my own chart to see if there's where's my MVPs here? Super Bowl MVP. Let's see. Oh, you could bet position. That's interesting. Quarterback minus 280. Running back, fullback plus 450. There might be some value in taking running back, fullback plus 450. Because like I said, I think Kenneth Walker has a really good shot. If he has multiple touchdowns and has 100 plus yards scrimmage, including rushing and passing, and it's a lower scoring game, if they win 20-17 and he has both touchdowns, he's winning the MVP.
Yeah.
The W3.
I
think there's a great chance. I think there's a great chance for him to win the MVP.
I think so too. Yeah. As you said it, like whenever they get to the 10-yard line, they just give it to him. So
what are your odds on Darnold? Plus 120?
Yeah.
Where did Andy find 2-1? That's not bad. I'm not betting it, but plus 120 is a joke.
Yeah.
That's a joke. That's insane.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hunter Henry.
Walker, by the way, Kenneth Walker is plus 650. I would rather play the running back at plus 450 and maybe sneak in a Ramondre Stevenson in case he has the same idea, right? 2 touchdowns.
Right.
Remember a couple of years ago, what was it? Was it James White? He won an MVP one year.
Did he win MVP? I mean, he scored the game-winning touchdown
in the year where they beat the Falcons. Am I wrong?
I don't know if he won MVP that year. He scored the game-winning touchdown, but I don't know if he won MVP. I'm not sure. Did he win MVP? I think they gave it to Brady, but who won MVP in?
No, you're right. It was not James White. Never won. He had a monster game, but he did not win the MVP.
Tom Brady was the MVP of 51. So
well, Cooper Kupp won. He was the last non-quarterback to win the MVP. Julian Edelman won 10 catches, 141 yards in Super Bowl 53.
Yeah, my fourth cousin.
Von Miller won the MVP for Denver 10 years ago.
He found the ball in the end zone. Yeah.
Malcolm Smith, of course, for Seattle.
Don't forget the great Larry Brown, coached the Sixers and Pacers and won MVP for the Cowboys.
Santonio Holmes won the year that Pittsburgh beat Arizona.
Yeah, that touchdown's great.
He had 9 catches, 131 yards in the touchdown. I could see JSN winning MVP if he has a monster game. If he's the only receiver on the team does anything, if Darnold throws for 225 and JSN has 130 of those yards, 11 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown, he's winning the MVP with those numbers.
Yeah.
Unless Darnold throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns and JSN just has one of them. But anybody who gets 2 touchdowns is going to be the MVP frontrunner. I wouldn't bet it. I just don't find a lot of value in it overall.
You mentioned you had Walker 650. Walker is 850 here at DraftKings.
Okay, so I'm looking offshore and I'm not betting these anyway. But yeah, I can't bet at DraftKings. It's irrelevant. If I tried to put that in right now, I wonder what they would limit me to.
I don't know. About 350, I guess. I don't know.
Should I try? You know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to go live on stream. I'm going to bet Kenneth Walker, literally just to see if DraftKings wants to limit me.
Okay. I'm excited.
You're excited? All right.
I'm excited to see what you're limited to. Yeah.
Let's see. We're going to log into DraftKings and Super Bowl LXI. Where's this under? Novelty props? Where am I looking here?
It just shows up right away if you go to the game, like right under the spread. But that's on desktop. So
that's on the desktop. So let's see.
Yeah. I'm not one of these fancy people who bets on their phone.
I can't bet on my computer because I have all these like remote login things on my computer.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It won't let me do this on the computer.
I do sometimes bet on my phone. I'm just kidding. I think it's just easier for me on the laptop.
I don't have any MVP game leader.
Is that because of the state you're in? That could be it.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think the state you're in doesn't allow you to win bet MVP.
Game props. Seattle time of possession. I kind of like that. Minus 145. Maybe not. Not a game. Not a thing I'm going to bet. Yeah, I can't bet MVP. You're going to have to log into my account after the show, and you can tweet out what you got from me. I don't even know what my login and password information is. I have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But I'll let you log in, and you could put $50 on the MVP, Kenneth Walker, and you're going to laugh when they limit you to like $5.
It's sad. It's sad. They should be a lot better than this, and they're not. It's pathetic. You know what the biggest crime is? You have Charles Cross is 2000-1. Gray Zabel's 2000-1. These guys will never win in a million years because they don't give out awards to offensive linemen. But like these are the guys who really get the job done. In that Falcons Patriots game. I thought if the Falcons held on, my vote for MVP, if I had one, would have been Alex Smack at center, because like he had such a great game. He was not expected to play. He showed up. He was awesome, and I think that his blocking and his presence there was so key for the Falcons getting the lead. It's true. I'm not joking. It's true.
I laugh because you're like fake, not joking.
Yeah. I'm serious. I would have voted for him for MVP. I wrote it. If you go back to my Super Bowl live blog, I wrote it at the time. I'm like, I would vote for Alex Mack. He's never going to win, but I would vote for him. Wow. So you can't bet these guys. But if life were fair, these would not be 2001. But and it's kind of weird that the worst. The worst of the offensive linemen are like graded as the same. Like Will Campbell and Charles Cross are the same as Garrett Bradbury and Anthony Bradford, Jalen Sundle. It's funny that way. And I guess like what's their only out is if like there's only one touchdown in the game and they fall on it, like a fumble. Someone fumbles in the end zone, they fall on the touchdown, and it's just 7-0. It's 7-0, and there's no crazy defensive plays. Like that's like the only time to do it. So it's the only touchdown scored. Like that, they would win MVP, right? Like I guess. I don't know. I guess
they would have to have not give up a sack, fall on, have a fumble recovery,
right,
or two, and maybe a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
In a low scoring game where nothing really happens.
Yeah, I guess there's a way for it to be done, but it could be any of the 10 guys here. So, Westover's 85-1 to score the Patriots' first touchdown. 40-1. I think it's 41 is pretty good, but that's just me. But I really do wonder who bet him down from 40-1 to 25-1. Like was it someone watching the show, or was it just someone who actually thinks independently came up with that as well?
No, it had to be somebody watching the show.
It probably was.
Almost who the heck is betting Jack Westover? Someone is thinking, I don't like this guy Walt. I don't want him to win this. I'm going to hedge by betting it myself just in case this douchebag wins. I don't want him to win, and at least I'll win it myself also. One of your haters. Maybe it was Mina Kimes.
Mina Kimes did it. She did it in between gathering information to yell at Orlovsky, who was just not prepared.
Then she's going to post that she hit Jack Westover, and everyone's going to think you copied her.
Yeah, that's true.
She's your biggest fan. She listens to every show.
she's the person giving us the super chats always.
Spoiler: Kevin Kovac is really Mina Kimes.
You would do like a deep dive, and like that's like her original name. It's like it's what is that Ace Ventura movie where the police sergeant was really the Dolphins kicker. We're gonna find out that Mina Kimes is actually Kevin Kovac.
Mina Kimes is really the kicker from the Giants, from the Bills. Wide right. It's Mina Kimes.
And she hates me because I made fun of the kicker, and this is her revenge tour by giving me money and then spending her other money to make my numbers worse and to take the credit. So that is if they do an Ace Ventura 3, we may have just uncovered the plot for that.
There you go. There you go.
All right. All right. So like I said, no show tomorrow. Tom's traveling. I will tweet out Tom's pick, or maybe he'll tweet it out. I'll just retweet it. And yeah, I will be adding some more props on Saturday. You know, I do like this Walker MVP because I think it's kind of like a hedge for our combined passing yards almost, you know, because if these guys don't go over, it's not like a true hedge because they can still win with a couple touchdowns. But like you said, Walker gets the most touchdowns, and
Walker get 2+ touchdowns.
Let's see. Touchdown, 2+ touchdowns. Walker is
that is a joke. That is criminal.
He might as well just bet him to win MVP.
That's a joke. That's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If he has 2+ touchdowns, you're getting plus 850 or whatever you said it was.
Yeah. Unless there's like a million touchdowns this game.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
That's horrible. That's absolutely
horrible. You know what a better bet right there might be? AJ Barner 2+ touchdowns.
I thought you were going to say Westover 2 touchdowns.
No.
Barner
like I said, Barner might be the guy to get the touchdown from the 1.
Yeah. I think that's true. Westover 250 to 1 for 2 touchdowns. I do like Barner. I do like Henry. They're both 22 to 1. 2 touchdowns is tough.
2 touchdowns is aggressive. Remember, I mean, you got to play the situation. Let's be honest here on what the best way is to make money in this game. It's live props or live scores or live Seattle's behind or team totals. That's the way to play the game correctly. You want to go to a Super Bowl party and have some fun? Go play some SGPs with May to get. Here's one I took. May 175, Darnold 175, JSN 60, Diggs 25, Henry 20, Booty 15, Kenneth Walker 10 receiving, Stevenson 10 receiving, Kenneth Walker 50 rushing, Stevenson 30 rushing, Henry 10. Henderson 10 receiving, May 20 rushing. Like just combine some of those types of easy to hit numbers.
Yeah.
And just kind of combo them, right? Not all of them in one shot, but take a couple with Booty out, take a couple with just the Patriots side, a couple with New England side, ladder it up, right? Then go to May and Darnold 200 or May to 175 and Darnold to 225. Kind of ladder it up as you go with minimal risk. Remember, there's too many bets that one can make. So you got to really, really manage your risk correctly. I mentioned that last week with the props. Just in general, there's just so many things you can take. And of course, save some of your bankroll for the game because there's better bets to take in game. But for somebody who's just going to go to a Super Bowl party, hang out with friends, and not be sitting and looking at an odds screen, great. Take 4 or 5 SGPs with different combinations of players that you like. Split them up by team in case you're totally wrong about one team. And then ladder it up. Darnold 175, Darnold 200, Darnold 225. JSN 60, 70, 80. Kenneth Walker 40, 50, 60 rushing. Right? So then you have a couple of different ladders of exposure to the same players. If they have a great game, you hit them all. If they have a mediocre or average game, you might hit 1 or 2 of them. And you're getting 2 to 1, maybe plus 250, 350. Again, small bets just to kind of get the action in and to slowly profit so that at least you're winning something. As you don't want to go into a game and your whole game flow is totally off, and every bet and prop you have is based on your assumption of the game, which you were way wrong on. And like I said, the games I've done the best on are the games I've been wrong pregame. Last year, dead wrong. I was on Kansas City. Told you last year I'm going to bet Kansas City every year they're in it because they were 3-2 and they're 60%, and I'm not going to go against Mahomes. Okay, you know what? If Mahomes is back next year, I'm probably going to be on Kansas City again next year. But you still make money live betting. Follow the game situation. Be disciplined. Be smart. There's a lot of opportunities out there. You and I will possibly talk during the game. We'll throw out some, Evan approvals. I can tell you right now, we're going to bet May rushing if he's behind.
Yep. We're
going to ladder that at halftime, 40, 50, 60 yards, or 30, 40, 50 yards, whatever that number is. we're going to play Hunter Henry. If his number is 18 and they're behind, we're going to play Hunter Henry to get 30, 40, 50 yards more, whatever than his number is. Mm-hmm. We're going to play Darnold over probably regardless. If they're behind, for sure we're playing Darnold over. And even if they're ahead, his number might be lowered because of that. So I like the Darnold passing yards in the second half, regardless if they're ahead or behind. But I like it better in the second half than the first half. So these are things that we'll do for the game, and we'll see how the script plays out.
Yep, we will. It should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for it. But yeah, like I said, I'll be posting some more props Saturday. And yeah, no show tomorrow. So that is it. I hope you guys win all of your bets for the Super Bowl. I hope you guys have a lot of fun. Especially, if you go to Super Bowl parties or something, maybe that's more incentive to bet Jack West over, because that by the way is a great story to tell at a party, like especially if he scores. Like you're like, I had that, and I did tell the story last night. I don't know if you heard. There was this really happened. There was like a cousin Sal gave out this like crazy prop for a guy to score a touchdown, and the guy scored a touchdown. And when that happened, some guys started laughing and some girls started laughing. And they looked at each other like, Cousin Sal? And they're like, yeah. And they eventually got married. So this is where the magic happens. So maybe you'll meet your soulmate because Jack Wester scores a touchdown. We'll see.
Or maybe because both teams get a defensive score and they say, Walter Football Show? Yeah.
So you're definitely doing defensive / special teams?
Yeah, I'll play it even if I can't find the hedge it to no risk. I'll play it for small, like I've done a couple of times, and we've gotten lucky. Listen, we've hit one. It's been profitable, so we're not throwing money down the tubes for this. We've hit it a bunch of times, and we're hitting it for big numbers, and we almost hit it for the doubles.
We should have. Should have hit last week.
We should have had it for Denver the other day, or for New England in the Denver game. Obviously, it didn't work out, but we should have gotten it there. Yeah. So yeah, I'll play it. I mean, again, you have two very good defensive teams. So this is when you want to look for some of those defensive potential scores, especially late in the game. Get a garbage pick six or a fumble, sack fumble, strip fumble, whatever. I think it's there. It's worth. But you want to get the right odds, and I'm not taking it yet because I'm still confident I'm going to find a way to hedge it out for no risk. But like I said, that's going to cost a lot in outlay, and most people don't have access to some of those accounts.
Right.
It's not worth going to find it.
Right. Okay.
23-20 New England. Let's go Pats.
Well, 21-14 Seahawks. Let's go Hawks. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it. Thanks especially to Kim Make an Eagle for the 49 super chat. Thank you so much, Kim Make an Eagle. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit walterfootball.com for tons of NFL content, all free. We'll be having more updates throughout the weekend. We'll be doing our live Super Bowl blog as always. And we're going to have updated 2026, 2027 NFL mock drafts. I'm going to be posting my awards so you can read about who I would pick to win MVP this year. And by the way, it's not Stafford or May. So both Mina Kimes and Orlovsky were both wrong. So, all right, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday.